got screens built out with the let's call it our album cover. I got screens built out.
Let's see.
Is that coming off your phone? Let's call it our album cover. That echo?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
It's coming off of my phone here. Let me turn the volume down for a second.
Morgile's in there.
Okay.
He called the number. It's busy. I haven't opened it yet. I'll let him know.
Thank you for calling Call-In Studios host and call screener line. Please enter your show or meeting number and press pound. Enter your 6-digit PIN number. Welcome, host. You are now in the host room and can manage your callers from the Call-In Studio web interface. Audio recording is on. Dual channel.
All right, we're live.
Yo, welcome.
We'll play the intro, when we get to 9 p.m., but we've already got some viewers trickling in. Morgile's in the chat.
Excellent.
And we do have him, I think, called in.
Brilliant.
So let's play the intro and I'll kick it off.
You're listening to the ZTitic Newscast on the ZTitic News Network with your hosts, Dave, and Xavier Diamant. Proceed by inquiry.
All right, welcome to episode 51 of the ZTitic.Newscast. We are your hosts, myself, Dave,
and Xavier Diamant.
And this is our first episode of 2025. It's January 9th on this chilly North Carolina evening, and I think the country is very much in a yin-yang right now with the raging apocalyptic firestorm out west, while much of the rest of the country is experiencing a dramatic cold front. And apologies ahead of time if you start to hear some noise in the studio. The heating unit has busted, so we got a couple space heaters here, and if our fingers start to chatter, we'll turn those on. But we've got a really awesome show set up today. Again, episode 51. This is a call-in show, so if you're listening and you would like to contribute to the show, you can call in and you'll be in the queue. No guarantees when we'll drop you in, but let's say the third caller today who we drop in, we will award with 444 Tfuel, which is a cryptocurrency on the Theta network. And ZTitic News is the first next generation news network powered by Theta. So for today's show, we are joined by a very special guest, a gentleman named Jon The Morgile. I think it was all the way back in 2020. We did a show with The Morgile, although we had a bunch of audio issues and connectivity issues, so it really wasn't the best representation of the conversation we'd like to have with Jon. But now we've upgraded our setup. I think Jon's got a better connection now, and we wanted to invite him on the show, the first show of 2025, to kind of reflect on 2024. Everybody in the podcasting world are doing these kind of like annual review, look ahead type shows, and we love those too. We try to do one every year, January, at the beginning of the year, kind of looking back and then prognosticating about what's around the corner. And we were talking off air, Xavier, your estimation of where we've landed in terms of predictions of maybe a B. If you go back to like our 2020 episode of January, it was you can search top 20 mega singularities of 2020, and so much of what we talked about and wrote about in that episode has only become more relevant, more prescient, more urgent in terms of its manifestation. Everything, and these are many topics that we'll talk about this evening, to do with the whole globe skepticism theater, the political machinations of the presidency and the government, the progression of cryptocurrency digital assets, as well as like weather warfare, exotic technologies, special access projects, and how that information is increasingly part of the mainline discussion.
And also the divide and conquer stratagems along the various categorical lines, the DEI movement,
the alphabet people, which is my new favorite slur, by the way.
Alphabet people. Also, I have a very good re-acronymization of DEI.
Let's hear it.
Deranged egalitarian insanity.
I don't think Coca-Cola will be taking that one up anytime soon, but yeah, apropos. But we've got Jon The Morgile, and for those who don't know Jon, although we appreciate those who do joining us tonight for tonight's very special show, I'd like to bring him into the discussion and maybe have Jon, if you have, if you're there, a minute or two on your journey.
I am.
Awesome, man. Could you introduce yourself?
I am here, and I only.
Say again.
Yes. I said I am here, and I only have a minute or two, and then I got to run. No, I'm kidding. We'll roll this thing till the wheels fall off if you want. So, yeah. What's up, guys? It's been a long time, and yeah, year in review. Why not? At least that means 2024 is officially done with, right?
Absolutely.
Finally.
God.
Good riddance.
Yeah. Yeah, good riddance. And so for those of y'all watching live and later on in the archives that don't know me, my name's Jon. On YouTube, the channel is The Morgile, and I got a lot of videos on there. They speak for themselves, I think, and we can talk. There's so much to talk about, man. Like I don't even know where to begin. But you mentioned the yin and yang thing, where we've got SoCal basically burnt to a damn crisp, and then over here it's like I think about 20 degrees right now. We're about to get hit with a blizzard,
right?
But it does definitely speak to just the breadth of America. Like just the scope of this country is pretty amazing, isn't it?
It is a surprisingly large country, and we talk a lot about cartography and cartographic censorship, which I know you do as well. And it blew my mind in high school when I learned the maps that we've been looking at were completely blown out of proportion, and they don't represent the actual land mass compared to the rest of the countries. And then it blew my mind even further when I hear, I forget the outfit that did the statistics on it. And granted, it's based on like 2002 numbers, but the entire world population could live comfortably in Texas. So it is an amazingly huge, but I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, that's what is all over mainline news today, is the fires, of course, and as they should be, because they're just incredible. But I created like sort of a short list of topics that I thought exemplified 2024 and would help us prognosticate around 2025. And I wasn't sure how to sort them by priority, but I thought we'd start with you, Jon, on some of the things you've been talking about recently, which are the same things you've talked about for years, and that is globe skepticism, because I feel like it ties in with some of the other key topics and theaters that I wanted to discuss tonight, namely the whole climate change agenda, the property destruction and seizure, the limitation on human exploration, as well as the other big topic was I titled space porn, because I feel like that globe skepticism, climate change, and space porn, they are all so interconnected. So maybe we can get three birds with one stone.
Definitely.
Yeah, man, we'll kill all the damn birds if you want.
Birds aren't real anyways, they're just government listening devices.
Oh yeah, maybe a few of them. I don't know, man. I don't know if I can get on board with all that. I've known a pretty cool few birds in my day.
Oh yeah,
no doubt about it. But you recently covered the final experiment. Could you, for the uninitiated, kind of bring everybody up to speed and give your synopsis of what is going on with that? Because, like, I'm so tired of the infighting and the co-optation
and
of
the
various
false
movements.
Pigeonholing and the false dichotomy, myopic reduction of the topic. I mean, it's just become a theater unto itself.
Oh, man. Yeah, it kind of makes me physically ill the way this whole thing has turned out, but I kind of saw it coming, and really I think I was late to the party on that, because there were people warning me about specific characters like years and years ago, and I kind of I don't want to say I turned a blind eye, but at the same time, like, I tried to keep things civil, at least for the sake of unity and for the community, and because, like, it's hard enough to come by decent friends in this sort of truth movement,
right?
And so you don't want to just throw them away flippantly. But real quick, to your point though, about this topic of globe earth skepticism tying into so many other things, I think that the key reason that this one is so important is because for all the other sort of very interesting and cogent conspiracy theories that we're all very familiar with, they are very much just that, and that's theories. And so while you can definitely make a valid and cogent case for a lot of things, the thing with the globe earth skepticism is it is the one that anybody can prove conclusively, beyond the shadow of a doubt. There is no sort of ambiguity in it. I mean, there is a lot of programming to cut through, but once you get there, it's pretty obvious. And the thing is once you realize exactly how true that is, it kind of opens your eyes in a new sort of way to all the other stuff. And it really does unlock a key element of discernment in our spirit, to where we're not afraid to ask questions that otherwise we would have been either ashamed or like afraid or just bullied from asking. And I think that's why this revelation is not only key and not only very important, but like the most important, right?
Well, it's funny you say that, because a lot of people, see it the exact opposite. Like, this is so it doesn't affect me whether I believe this or not or understand this or not, and they're just kind of nihilistic about it.
Yeah, we get a lot of that.
Yeah, that's exactly what my mom said. I was finally kind of getting to know my mom as an adult. It was like right before the whole COVID thing, I guess. Yeah, so it was like around 2018, 2019, right? And so I'm kind of trying to talk to my mom about this, and basically, you know, she's halfway through a box of wine, and she's like, well, but the thing is, basically, I can tell she kind of thinks I'm crazy, but she doesn't want to come out and say it. So what she says is like, this doesn't affect me. Like, what difference does it make whether it's this way or that way? Like, I'm still going to wake up tomorrow and everything's going to be the same. And, you know, there is some truth to that. But on the other hand, you know, if what I'm saying is true, then they're also deceiving all generations of toddlers with this deception.
Yeah, how do
through
you
the
not
federal
find that
education
interesting?
system.
How do you not find that
Right.
interesting? And
And
then,
then-
like, you start to see how early the propaganda begins and how pervasive it is as adults.
I mean, you have like
Yeah,
planets
no.
and rockets and stuff on diapers before they even can basically, you know, function fully and properly. You're putting space propaganda on the jewels of your infant. I mean, it's extremely pervasive. It saturates the culture.
Well, and you know, and when we're that young, like our minds are just sponges. Like, and we don't probably, you know, we don't remember like consciously a lot of the stuff that we take in when we're very young. But I think like that's why they do that. Like, I actually remember the solar system mobile hanging over my crib when I was very young, because I would look at that thing all day long, and I didn't know what it was. But, you know, later on down the road, I get sort of, you know, verification of what that was in the schooling system and all the rest, right?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, the thing is, though, I think it's just more than, you know, just the fact that they're deceiving everybody with it. But look at the entire infinite space paradigm and what comes along with it. I mean, it is pretty bleak when you realize that, you know, we're just sort of flying around in infinite space on a speck of dust that really doesn't make a shit bit of difference in the grand scheme of things. And, you know, and that all appears to be just patently false.
Hey, John,
Once you
there's
come to
a
this
comment in
realization.
the chat. You mentioned the deception. Obviously, if it's true, from basically pre-birth, from conception, we're being brainwashed to view, you know, our habitat as a completely different thing than it actually is. Someone said, "What is the deception?" Can you summarize your conclusions?
Yeah, I mean, the deception is they convince everyone as little kids that we live on a spinning ball in outer space, right? And so with that deception comes everything from the Big Bang Theory as the origin point and the genesis of all things, and also things like evolution. And I mean, there's just all kinds of sort of theoretical,
Offshoots.
philosophical baggage that comes right along with it, you're right. But so, yeah, that is what the deception is. It is to basically, I think, to sort of nix our pioneering spirit, which is like hard-coded into human nature, where, you know, they've sort of convinced us, like the whole Truman Show thing, that we, you know, everything's been explored, there are no new frontiers, and like, even if you were to, you know, go far south as you could, you would just wind up back where you started eventually, right? So it is sort of like the perfect deception. And anybody that doesn't see the motivation for it just really hasn't quite thought it through, because there's a bunch of really quite obvious motives for this deception.
Absolutely.
In my opinion. Yeah.
Well, and it's also a cosmological, cartographic, and spiritual deception as well. If you can impregnate the idea in people early on that the ordering of things is based on an orbs in the void cosmology, then you perpetuate this egregore of insignificance and mediocrity. That, oh, well, we're just an anomaly. We're just space trash, you know, accident. floating around in a chasm. And I bet there's way more trillions of other amazing places we could rather be. We're just a shitball. I mean, that's kind of the philosophical subtext of the idea that, and then you inject this kind of false religious narratives into that cosmology that says, we got to be special because we're the only life amidst us being only 0.0000000000001% of all that's in existence. And all that's in existence is basically a vacuum. It's basically nothing. It's, it's this macro atomistic egregore that's designed to subdue and literally distort the mind towards accepting mediocrity as the norm. And, that's what the whole mediocrity principle is. That was advanced under Copernicus. But then even before, if you really want to do an inventory on the notion of our realm being a sphere, you do go back quite a distance, all the way back to Pythagoras and the mystery schools and the initiation rituals, the hieratic rites that went into those mysteries of, preparing the initiate to be a guardian over Gaia, and that all the other lights in the sky are these other orbs, and there's deities and gods that protect those orbs, and it's the whole astral cult motif, and that we're on an orb too, and we're one of those lights in the sky too, and we're the protectors of this little light in the sky. That was the power of suggestion narrative that really started this whole mass misconception. And you're right, and people are right and say, the Greeks thought about this a long time ago. It's like, they were initiated into the mystery school imagination around the justification for the different concepts that went into the hieratic rites there. But it's not a reality. It's a mystical confabulation. It was never meant to be taken 100% literally. And unfortunately, we're in this kind of idiocracy.
I think a big point that a lot of people miss is just how much the lie has evolved over time.
Definitely.
To the point where, just like one example, the concept of other galaxies was invented in 1929 by a dude named Hubble, right? Mm-hmm. They ended up naming that space telescope after dude, but the concept of other galaxies in the infinitude is relatively new. And yet most people will assume that, that was also something that the ancient Greeks knew all those thousands of years ago, was, the concept of other galaxies and other solar systems and planets, which I think, it is a telltale sign of a lie that the narrative continues to morph and change as things go forward.
Well, and I mean, that whole like mystery school, like orbs in the void conception, it definitely rippled out. Other cultures started to sort of glom onto that long before Copernicus. You can look at Indian astronomy as well. They're starting around, what was it, about the 6th century, I believe, and they started to incorporate that whole kind of thing into it. And the Aryabhata, that's who I was thinking of. He's kind of the big, reference to Aryabhata. He was the one that sort of configured the Bhumandala and the Vedic conception of the sort of macro supersphere of it. It was really a planisphere, where the realm of existence, or the plane of existence, spanned out over millions of miles, and then the Celestarium, or the luminaries, they were very far away and millions of miles away. But it was only really until Aryabhata that he brought that planisphere on the ground and said, no, we actually are a planet. The Greeks were right, and then you see the the Arabian or the Islamic astronomers too, sort of echoing that sentiment. And so, yeah, the egregore, the thought form, has been around for a long time, and it's been kind of indispensable to how humans have sort of justified their existential place and their spiritual imagination. And I think that in one sense, maybe we needed that egregore to sort of expand our imagination, but now we actually need to recontextualize it and understand that it's not a literal it's not a literal outlay. You know, we don't actually have very good cartographic forensic actuaries. The map, almost all the maps you see are skewed, and that includes the projection of the surface outlays of the world, including the oceans, wrapping around a ball. So the reality is we have a censored and arrested development cartography that prevents us from understanding more of what actually reality is. And in its place, we put in these substitutionary ideas and these cosmological constructs and confabulations that are just supposed to be a good fix for what we ultimately don't know. And people are just programmed into that fix, and that's the only pattern of reality or their only frame of reference that they can imagine. And you put any monkey wrench in that conception, and it's just, you know, cognitive dissonance, and, you know, they go to war and, you know, start name calling.
Well, that's what I call the theater space porn, because now with AI, I mean, we've already had all these years of Hollywood movie magic depicting the universe to us, and creating ideas about aliens invading, you know, coming down to the world, landing on these extraterrestrial bodies and so on, and of course the corporate and governmental development of spacecraft and Space Force and satellites and all this good stuff that creates all this imagery. Even though people well know, you know, you can go to any AI app now and create a bunch of imagery that looks just like this. Mm-hmm. This is a Instagram post, the clearest image of Venus ever taken by Japan's Akatsuki spacecraft of Venus. And, you know, you guys be the judge for yourself. But I question it. I question, I mean, is this a photograph? Like,
it's unreal. I mean, it says Japan's Akatsuki spacecraft, which has been orbiting Venus since 2015, has captured a remarkably clear image of the planet's atmosphere. The image was taken using infrared camera, revealing detailed features, Venus's cloud structure, atmospheric dynamics. The camera's detector is overwhelmed by the brilliance of sunlight reflecting off the day-lit crescent. Oh, that's a very convenient explanation. That's a weird color for so-called sunlight.
So, my question to you, to the point that was raised earlier, so are y'all, and maybe y'all can tell me where you stand, but are y'all of the mind that, like, so we've arrived at this point where we're forcing all toddlers to believe in the spinning ball? So, like, did we arrive at this on accident? Or was this like a deliberate, intentional deception that somebody like inserted into the cultural milieu at some point? Like, or have y'all decided on that?
I think that there's a both and possibility here through the idea of mass misconception, and I think that it started off as kind of an imagineering exercise, basically. You know, when you go back to Pythagoras and Aristarchus and Philolaus and all this stuff, it was more of a philosophical, cosmological sort of imagineering of existence in the first place, and that's how it was kind of popularized. And then it became to be like, oh no, this is how it absolutely must be. Like there's no other explanation for it. And then that conviction metastasized into discoveries and conventions that I think eventually the control oligarchs, if we can put it that way, realized that not only was it a mass misconception, and but it was also a pervasive egregore, and that they could use that to their advantage.
And today, it's more of an inherited advantage.
Yeah.
That you would never want to admit because of XYZ reason. That's why I lump climate change in there, because as a related tangential to the globe skepticism issue, because without the globe, you have no global warming. If you have no global warming, you have no climate change. If you have no climate change, you have no
need for world government.
Exactly.
Yeah, like the whole emperor has no clothes thing, and like the house of cards comes crumbling down pretty quick. But the reason I ask that is because, and I definitely sort of tend to agree with your summation there, but at the same time, I just find it very hard to fully believe that we could intentionally deceive all generations of toddlers the world over simply by sort of happenstance or accident. Like, you just don't have aloof sort of blind deception happening. Usually it's very much deliberate, right? Mm-hmm. But so, I mean, I guess I can get on board with, like, it started out theoretical and then they jumped on board with it because they saw that there was a benefit.
What about religions though, John? I mean, they've done
religions too. I think that it you can actually,
that's a multi-generational deception if you believe any one of the religions is wrong.
Right. It's the kind of use of literalism, I think, as a sort of fundamental vehicle for transforming people's consciousness. And I think that exists within the religions too, and that there's a similar kind of mythicist critique, I think, that can be levied against a lot of the scientific shibboleths of our time, and that many of them are basically glorified myths.
But I would think that, so, like, scientism is the only religion that the government sort of endorses and actually more than endorses, like, embodies and shoves down everyone's throats too. So there is a bit of a difference. But I mean, I do sort of tend to agree with the premise.
Right, and
about religion.
The idea there is that it goes back to Plato and the noble lie, right? That essentially the ruling elite are sort of they have a noblesse oblige unto themselves to keep the plebs in order, and however they see fit to do that is really the only framework that we've had for at least the manufactured historical yarn that we refer to on a day-to-day basis, or the historiography that has come to predominate the mainstream timelines. That actually is a part of the deception too. So I think that it's really a whole new world, as the Aladdin song goes. I mean, what we've been presented with is clearly erroneous in all these different fields across the board, and trying to parse the motivations for why it's erroneous. I think there's an argument to be had that it's kind of beside the point. We can already see that it's erroneous, and that should be enough to help us change things. But I think that it's worth diving into the motivations as well, and even using what little shreds and slivers of history that we have to come up with a picture that can clarify some of these mass misconceptions, I think. And looking at systems of power, I think, are definitely important within that equation, and finding the conflicts of interest and the double standards, right, that this sort of two-tier social engineering method has built up over time. And in that sense, I think it's fruitful to talk about all the different ways and narratives that the globe has become predominant, or the whole astrophysicalist, macro-atomistic egregore has become prominent. And you're absolutely right that there were specific persons with specific agendas, with specific convictions that wanted to push this conception for a reason, and we've gotten into that, of course, throughout the years we've been doing ZNN. You've gotten into it to a great extent too, but it's really this kind of and really, if you go back to where it all started, the whole mystery school, ritual imagination, egregore worship, essentially, that's where it really is utilized the most, is in these secret societies. I think that they do know the reality of the situation, but they're gonna fight tooth and nail to prevent a proper disclosure, and they're gonna create straw man representations of the issue as much as they can in order to keep people mentally corralled.
To that point, I want to play this clip for you guys, and then I'm going to bring in another caller who I think has a contribution or a question for Jon. Is that cool, Jon?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just had a little note circled because at the top of the show, you had asked about the final experiment, and we haven't even touched on that yet. So as long as we don't forget that, then
okay, let's not forget that.
However y'all want to do it, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah,
100 men. What would you do if your beautiful date told you the earth was flat?
Laugh at her.
Laugh at her.
Tell her she lying.
Tell her she lying. Pass the point.
We're playing.
Let's play. All right, Sarah. We talked to 100 men. What would you do if your beautiful date told you the earth was flat?
I hope he'd agree with me.
Agree with her. I would. I just met you. We're on a date. You fine. You tell me the earth flat. That's cool. I agree. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little comedic note there.
But Jon, going back to the final experiment, you want to share your take on what's going on there, and then we'll bring in, there's an anonymous caller in the queue, which we'd be happy to bring in.
Sure. Yeah, man. I guess briefly, so in my opinion, the whole thing was a charade, even if the footage is 100% true. Mm-hmm. The behavior of certain people publicly, leading up to the whole thing was extremely suspect and out of character for people that I felt like I knew very well for a long time. And so that's all very suspect. But then we also have just so many issues with the footage. Like, I don't know, man. I'm not going to go on the record with any grandiose claims, but I just don't believe the footage. Like, maybe there's a 24-hour sun in the Antarctic. I'm fine with that. But I also think that a lot of that stuff just is very suspicious. And, there used to be a time when I would vehemently defend Jeranism and basically trust anything that he, purported or, vouched for. And those days are over. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, and... Wow, the way that he's basically just taken a big dump over everybody that supported him for the better part of the last 10 years is pretty shocking, and just a slap in the face to everybody that has worked very hard to get the mainstream to take this topic seriously. So, and then also I do reserve the possibility that he may also be my hero, because I think that and so I'm going way off the deep end here, but I sort of believe that he has superiors up the chain of command that have given him an ultimatum, and he does not have a lot of latitude, and he maybe doesn't have a lot of creative liberties, and he has to play a role.
Right.
And in doing that, I think he's also sort of left a lot of obvious breadcrumbs that anybody that has any sort of discernment about them will recognize that this is not the same Jeranism that we've known for years, and it does appear that he's playing a role, and it does appear that he has left some clues But and in that regard, maybe he's my hero.
Yeah, I mean, I like the silver lining kind of way of looking at it potentially. I mean, at a minimum, you know, the whole saying, there's no such thing as bad publicity. This is causing people to examine the issue. And ultimately, it seems like the FE community, so to speak, they're just like, what WTF? They're not changing their minds. It's not like it convinced them. Of course, the opposition is like, look, the FE community, they're coping hard. Well, that's people like Professor Dave who were looking for that anyways. They want to relish in that. But there's still going to be people in that camp who are like, wait a minute. You know, they think a little harder. They look a little bit deeper. They're at least investigating. They're more curious perhaps than they were before. And the debate is relevant. It keeps the subject in the conversation, and I think that's a benefit.
Well, and I think another positive aspect is, look, if you just look at the thing that they titled this publicity stunt as, it's
the final
experiment. I mean, can you have a more Orwellian and pretentious?
Right. That's not very scientific.
It's not that's not a scientific title. So I mean, anyone who has,
it's almost like they did. It's almost like they did that sort of thing deliberately. That's kind of what the point that I was making.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like it's almost like they're doing this so blatantly and overtly. Like I don't know. Some of this seems very obvious to me.
Right.
And it's like it seems as if their heart was really in it. They would have done a better job. I don't know, man.
And we have broached this topic when it comes to the clandestine and kind of occult, perhaps kosher disclosure methodology behind this issue, right? There's a kind of kosher disclosure going on where people are allowed to scoff at the issue in this very myopic, kind of reduced, idiocratic sandbox that they've created for the issue. But anyone who has an IQ above, a hot summer day is going to start thinking to themselves, why would this contention be persisting today in the 21st century with all these technological increases? Can we just write this off as a cult of dumb people? I don't think that that's very plausible, because if that was really the case, then it would have never resurfaced the way that it did. So I think that it's not just an internet issue. That's another thing that they like to use. That's the hand waving they like to use is, this issue was only reanimated because of the internet. And it's like, that's a half truth. Yes, the fact that it's gotten out over the internet couldn't have happened without the internet. But the fact that the issue still has persisted in the human mind is indicative of the fact that it was never a settled issue. People like to think of it as,
archaic relic.
This is an archaic conception. But it's like, if it was so archaic, then why has it exponentially grown in terms of an issue? I mean, even amongst people who aren't religiously minded, people within the academy, people within, retired professors, all these, retired pilots, there's a lot of disciplines and a lot of fields where people have come out of the woodwork and been like, there's actually a little bit more to this topic than the mainstream would like you to believe. And I think that there really is. I mean, and I think it goes into history. It goes into, statecraft. It goes into cosmology, philosophy, everything. It really, it is a skeleton key in the sense that it's connected to like so many fields simultaneously. It's not just this, anomaly of contrarians within the physics community. It branches out and it touches people from all walks of life. And that to me says it's not just a ruse. It's not just, some passing fad. This is actually going to continue to grow in terms of the 99th monkey effect, right? Once you get a critical mass of people conceiving things in a way that runs counter to the mainline establishment, well, in some ways, that contrarian thesis passes through the 3 stages of truth, right? At first, it's ignored, then it's laughed at, ridiculed, attacked, and then it becomes self-evident. So I think we're in the peak of the second phase with all this PR stuff, with the final experiment stuff. Because man, if you go and I've actually accessed an old encyclopedia from like the late 1800s, and they were talking about the limitations of cartography back then, and how there's a lot of problems with this orb in the void spherical conception of the world because of all these ship expeditions and all of these aerial tests and the notion that
violations of natural laws.
Right.
I mean,
right.
What?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So in that sense, history has been censored, just like cartography has been censored, just like basic common sense has been censored. And so I see it as part and parcel to kind of a new renaissance, actually, a genuine epistemological rupture in the science du jour, in the current mainline conception of things and the order of things. So I think we're actually right at the beginning of a serious epistemological rupture in the sciences that could honestly delegitimize and invalidate the past 150 years worth of theoreticist speculation. And I think that's exactly the correction we need.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned the thing about the Freemasons. And, I think that it is definitely knowledge that the Freemasons protect.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's necessarily anything that they just go around teaching all their initiates and Blue Lodgers, but it is something that it is, it's there in the world, and it's probably there in their text. And for the ones that realize it, from what I gather, there are different factions among these sort of elite secret societies and things.
Sure.
And it almost seems as if a certain faction got a hold of this information and realized that their particular faction could benefit and get a big leg up on some other faction if they expose this, right? And it's almost as if we're seeing that play out now. I mean, it really does seem that way to me, but what do I know?
Oh, no, I think that's a really good point, and if you look at religious history, you see these big conflagrations between the existing ruling class and an up-and-coming radical kind of revolutionary brand of the same general religious thinking. You see that in pretty much every single religious discipline and history. And so I think this is a manifestation of a sort of Freemasonic schism or like a massive reformation or something that's actually transpiring behind the scenes, and most people only see this sort of reality TV, chaos world sort of low resolution rendition of this reformation and this schism going on within the upper echelons. But I think that is a really good framework for that. There's almost go ahead.
Well, I was just going to add that I think there's probably also a third tier to that, and that would be the spiritual tier,
right,
which I think happened, superlatively, and prior to all the other stuff. But anyway, not to interrupt, but I think that's probably in there too.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think that the main thing is, like, what people mean by spirit, because there is a faction of elite that want to basically engineer out any sort of spiritual conception within humankind. And that's basically the transhumanist, technotronic era, material reductionist misanthrope faction. They want people literally to be as close to robots and automatons as possible. And they've engineered society in all these different influential ways to regiment people's behavior, create all these hyper predictive actuaries, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a spiritual war in the sense that there's very prominent powers in the world that don't want us to have any spiritual conception of anything whatsoever at all.
Well, I think
anymore.
they're actually sick of waiting for us to become the robots they've been trying to make us. And that's why one of the other main theaters of discussion I thought was apropos for this year was the technological displacement factor with AI, which, as it happens, was on our list from 2020.
Yep.
And it wasn't until 2022 when ChatGPT became part of the common vernacular. And now you've got Jensen Huang, the head of NVIDIA, saying that in the future, your IT department, the guys who hook up your computers and install your applications and troubleshoot and all that, they're going to become the HR of AI agents. So like we need another HR, but
HR means human
resources of
right,
AI
right.
agents, right? So
Wow.
they're, instead of
What could possibly go wrong?
right, and so the implication, of course, is that, well, why would an AI agent need HR? It's because they've replaced a human, and that's, AI agents, that's pretty close to the Matrix Agent Smith, right?
Right.
It's very much taking off of the gloves, so to speak, the velvet gloves.
Well, because everyone knows that.
I'm kind of.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that.
I was just going to say I'm kind of. You go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay.
You go ahead.
I got it.
I was just going to say that in the corporate world, right? HR is arguably the least productive element of any corporation.
Who would argue against that?
Who would argue against that? No one. So HR, it's almost like they're saying, IT, or people who train in internet technologies, etc., they're gonna just be playing with AI programs and maybe still getting paid. We'll see. That's millions and millions of jobs. Millions and millions of mortgages.
Yeah, they are
lives,
definitely phasing people out of the workforce. They've been doing it to Americans for such a long time. Like, honestly, I don't even know where most of the jobs are going to come from in the future. But I'm kind of under the impression that this whole artificial intelligence thing is just something that they've only recently made available to the public. And they've kind of given us a cover story that it's this sort of large language model thing. But I truly believe that DARPA invented this AI intelligence probably decades ago, and military's been using it for all sorts of things that we have no idea. Yeah. And now they're finally rolling it out to us for a few reasons. For one reason, we are now their data training module, right? So they're using
100%.
us as their
100%.
training module. But then there's also the element to where they can have the sort of plausible deniability that pretty much any video that comes out can now be deep fake. They can just say it was deep faked, right?
Well,
and
we can
they
say the
always
same
have that
thing.
plausible
So
deniability.
we can say the same thing. So when they show us the clearest image of Venus ever taken by Japan's Akatsuki spacecraft, we can say the same thing. So it's actually a very negative thing that we're here because nobody knows what's the truth anymore.
Yeah, and they've done that by design. That this is the techno obscurantist agenda.
But I think you're on.
Get hypnotized.
I think you're on point, John, in that this technology's been around for a while behind the scenes, and only the most elite, the most well financed, have had access to it.
Yeah.
And they've been working on it, and now they're at the point where, if you're in the industry, you train AI models. Well, what does that mean? You teach it how to be human, essentially. And the big trend I see in the corporate world right now is AI is not going to replace you. It's just that your competition will be using it. And if you don't use it, you'll be beaten by them. And so that is, in my opinion and estimation, the pre-sale phase where, like you said, they get you to adopt it, much like we adopted Google to find whatever it was we were looking for, but they were using it behind the scenes to basically understand what we're thinking about. And likewise, they're going to start releasing these agents, which will, much like the H-1B visa immigrants, need to be trained by the people that they will eventually replace before they replace them. And so you're going to see applications get developed that act like you, but not without your input first. And then when that gets to a point through their actuaries that they can, and they may even take a little bit of a loss at first, to replace the human talent with the AI talent. But eventually, I do think that's the goal. That's actually, I have a good clip to play on that subject. This is Jeffrey Hinton, the godfather of AI.
No.
I gotta restart it.
I think.
Restart it.
Humanity know what it's doing?
No. I think we're moving into a period when, for the first time ever, we may have things more intelligent than us.
You believe they can understand?
Yes.
You believe they are intelligent?
Yes.
You believe these systems have experiences of their own and can make decisions based on those experiences?
In the same sense as people do, yes.
Are they conscious?
I think they probably don't have much self-awareness at present. So in that sense, I don't think they're conscious.
Will they have self-awareness, consciousness?
Oh, yes. I think they will in time.
And so human beings will be the second most intelligent beings on the planet.
Yeah. We have a very good idea of sort of roughly what it's doing. But as soon as it gets really complicated, we don't actually know what's going on any more than we know what's going on in your brain.
What do you mean we don't know exactly how it works? It was designed by people.
No, it wasn't. What we did was we designed the learning algorithm. That's a bit like designing the principle of evolution. But when this learning algorithm then interacts with data, it produces complicated neural networks that are good at doing things, but we don't really understand exactly how they do those things.
Wow.
Interesting. So, if you were to re-extrapolate this back to the sort of spiritual war motivation, if you look at the sort of New Age movement, anthroposophy, spiritual science, right? You'll see this interesting thread by Steiner talking about the Ahrimanic incarnation, right? Which, if you look at Ahriman, right, that's the later Zoroastrian term for Spinista Mainu, which is the evil thought of lying mind, right? He's like the sort of evil dual, or the yin to the yang of the god of beneficence, right, Ahura Mazda, and that he believes that Ahriman will seek an incarnation within the physical plane, but it will ultimately be an anti-human incarnation. And so I think we're seeing a very sort of cryptic, but not so cryptic declaration of what's actually going on with this acronym artificial intelligence, right? AI. That's the same acronym as Ahrimanic incarnation. So I think that there is an intentional effort to bring about more and more anti-human conditions through technology as a vector reducing humans to a kind of mineral or elemental state.
A golem state.
A golem state. Where we're not really animals so much anymore because we're like hardwired with all these minerals and we're cybernetic and we're up, we're not even really engaging with the physical world in the same way that other mammals are anymore. We're like somewhere between animal and mineral or something. That they want to reduce humankind to a sort of sub-soul state through techno-hypnotism and techno-oracleism. And I think that it's kind of them coming out and saying, yeah, we're actively doing this, and we're actually just moving along swimmingly now, because people are so anesthetized and they're programmed, and they're constantly in a state of hypersuggestibility, right? People are on 5, 10, 15 medications. They're watching TV 6, 7 hours a day sometimes. There's just this hypersuggestibility, super hypnotist stranglehold that's been created through technology, and it's pervasive. It's almost unavoidable at this point. So I think that that's all part of this broader spiritual war to bring about a kind of anti-human, or what the people of the Abrahamic persuasion would call the Antichrist.
6 or 7 years ago, if I would have started talking to y'all about the transgender agenda, a lot of people might have looked at me sideways, right? But now that we've been through 8 years of Joe Biden or whatever, or however many years, I don't even remember.
Seems like it's been 8 years.
It seems like 8 damn years. And
8 years on my lifespan, that's for sure.
But like, look at how far the transgender agenda has progressed in just the last 5 years. Things have gone absolutely crazy down.
Unbelievable.
But the point that I'm seeing is, and like I just kind of see this unfolding, is like, okay, so now there is no sort of definition of gender, at least officially, right? And so now, next thing you're going to see is AI robots that are going to have social security numbers and rights like you and me. I mean, is that where they're going with this? Because first it's like, okay, there's no such thing as gender, so there's no gender on your ID or birth certificate. And now robots are humans too. I mean, like, is that where they're going with this whole thing?
Hey, John,
that's an interesting thought there.
John, look at if you have the YouTube up, and for those just listening on the phone, there's a couple people in the queue. Check out the video component on our YouTube stream. I have the meme which perfectly exemplifies what you're saying, John. And it's the prism on the Pink Floyd album, basically. And it's got, the light source, and it says gays deserve the right to get married. Think back to like Obama last year of his term. That was like the big victory lap. And now,
hoorah,
we've progressed, right? But in less than 5 years, trans kids,
the rainbow of trans kids,
the alphabet people are marching,
oh my God, man.
It's literally just what you said.
Start being okay.
And we posted this June 11th, 2021. So, I mean, you're literally on point, less than 5 years.
When did it start being okay to like shove all kinds of weird sexual preferences on little kids? Like, I always thought that was way off limits in a moral, civilized, country. But now it's like, oh, now you're transphobic if you say something against that kind of craziness. I'm so glad I don't have any children, dude. I mean, I really am, because like, they would have definitely been through public schooling, so I think I probably dodged a bullet on that one insofar.
Well, it's never too late. You never know. But
never know.
You never know. But I would say that this is all part of the abominationist sort of segment that I think is tied to this technocratic sort of misanthropy, and trying to fetishize or stylize or normalize mutilation. Turning mutilation into something that's like a virtue signal. And to me, that's like such an Ahrimanic like wager and like a spurn against human intelligence. They're like, oh yeah, we can get them to do these abominable, completely unnatural, godforsaken things, and they'll think it's popular. They'll think it's progressive. They'll think it's trendy. And they've proven that they can actually convince a segment of the population that it is. And this is all part of the biggest scientific discovery of the 20th century was the realization that as long as you put the word science in front of something, you can convince more and more people that it's true. And I think that that's true with the trans and the whole gender theory stuff. Gender doesn't actually really apply to biological entities. It's a literary designation, ultimately. Like genderized words within Spanish, right? Words that end in
like
A,
L or
words,
la, right? Yeah.
Words that end in O. That's the only real existence of gender, is literary designation denoting characteristics or qualities of the thing being designated. It had nothing to do with the actual biological state of living organisms until within the past 50 years, and then all of a sudden, science is whatever we can make it, guys. And I think that's the paradigm we're in. We're in this pseudo-scientific charlatanry matrix, and they've
to your point though, like I would just add to that real fast, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that in that respect, pseudoscience is necessarily always fraud.
Yes.
Okay. And so, like, when you've got things like the final experiment, even just the name kind of, when you start calling things experiments that are not actually experiments,
Right.
Exactly.
that is
not an
by
experiment.
definition
And then final.
pseudoscience.
It's like
And now
gaslighting.
it is definitely fraud.
It's definitely
It is
fraud.
That's
Fraud.
what it is. So,
Fraud. Well,
yeah.
because I mean,
Yeah.
even if we're to get in the nitty gritty of it, I didn't see any demonstration of antipodal instantiation there. It's just another skybound observation from a flat level baseline. It doesn't prove sphericity. It doesn't prove contiguous convexity commensurate with a circumference of 26,000 miles. It doesn't do any of that. It doesn't show bending oceans. It doesn't
I'm
prove
getting that
anything.
tattoo. Write that down. I'm getting that tattoo.
Oh, thank you.
Everything you just said, I'm getting that tattooed on my rear. I love it. I love it.
But I mean, that needs to be the response. Is just because you guys go to one point in an ice desert in the far south, it doesn't prove anything. It proves literally nothing. It neither disproves planar phenomenological principles or realmism, for that matter, and it doesn't prove the orb in the void globe cosmology. It does neither. It accomplishes nothing. It's literally a singular piece of anecdotal observation data. That's it. That's not an experiment. Period. And if we're going to say that's the final experiment, that's literally an insult to human intelligence. It's neither an experiment, nor could it possibly be the last one we could conceive of. It's just an insult.
And of course, it just in one fell swoop, eliminates all the other arguments, disproving global ideology.
That's why it's
Coriolis
Orwellian.
effect, the Foucault's pendulum,
Right.
all these other things that, unfortunately, Jeranism had covered, I thought, in many cases quite well.
Yeah.
Strange. It's very strange.
Well, the fact that he would just,
About face.
Well, and the thing that's so disingenuous about it is he was always the one saying, oh no, this is just like what I was referring to before, this is a decentralized awakening. This is people from all walks of life coming to this understanding. And for him to brush all that or like sum all that up as, oh, it's just a weird, deranged cult. They're bad researchers. It's like, you're counting yourself in that, dude. You're literally self-referring and then projecting that onto people who are smarter than you, actually. And I think that it's so disingenuous for him to do that. And this other Johnny-come-lately guy, Witsit, you know, he just goes only one way with the topic. He only kind of pigeonholes it within biblical cosmology. He doesn't really talk about big picture, you know, cover-up, the cover-up industrial complex, right? He never really gets into that. It's all just like, oh, well, you know, there's good reason through faith and belief to come to a conviction that, you know, maybe we aren't on a sphere. And it's like, yeah, that's an okay start. And yeah, you have some good, you know, refutations of some of the justifications for the globe, but it's kind of a neophyte comprehension. And the fact that he pigeonholes it so much within biblical cosmology.
I feel like people pick a lane and they want to stay in the lane.
Right.
You know, we've had Nathan Oakley on. He doesn't want to talk about motives. I'm like, why not?
Why not?
Like, there's plenty of motives I can talk about that are manifesting for real. Like
in people's face.
The climate change.
The climate change hysteria.
The weather modification agenda, which depends on this theory of climate change and global warming. They're interconnected. We can't deny. I get it. Like, you know, you build your content, you build your audience, you want to stay in your lane, you want to cater. Adam Green, we've had multiple times.
Classic example.
He does not want to go outside of his lane.
Yeah, he'll just shill Dave Farina instead of actually picking up a book and properly researching the content of the topic.
I found a video you did, John, recently.
Dave Farina. Oh Lord.
Yeah, I know.
Is that Professor Dave?
Yeah.
Fuck that guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh Lord.
He's so cringy and painful to listen to. But you know, I saw a video you did, John, in preparation for the show, addressing Owen Benjamin. You know, he's a guy. He'll change lanes, but he picks a lane. He stays in it. He milks it for all it's worth. I mean, opportunistically, I think.
Right.
And often Johnny come lately as well.
And again, superficial neophyte level comprehension of the issue. And I think that's exactly what they want. They don't want systems or, you know, integral thinkers to approach the topic from a multidisciplinary point of view. That's the last thing they want. They don't want any real legitimacy being lent to it through a vector of other ongoing epistemological debates, physical conventions, the philosophy of science, really. The fact that philosophy, science, and spirituality were once all essentially the same discipline. And that we've now entered into this schizoid age where they're sequestered away from each other in these little sandboxes, and, you know, never they shall meet again, basically. And I think that separatistic worldview, it really has massive ripple effects, and you can see it in the cosmology that's in the mainstream. You know. Yeah, this is hilarious. This is more of the space mythos.
Yeah,
stuff.
I have some space porn up to kind of just underscore some of the topics we're talking about, but this made me laugh. I came across it on Instagram. Space Science. It's an actual channel. Space Science. But anyways, the most extreme weight in the universe, and it covers a single teaspoon of a neutron star material would weigh about 4 billion tons on Earth. That's 500,000 Mount Everest compressed into something smaller than a sugar cube. And it's just like, it's like a video game. I feel like I'm... But anyways, we've been rambling a lot, John. What do you think?
Okay, so a few things. I took some notes so I don't forget, because I've got a severe clinical case of I'm a pothead. Okay, so you mentioned Owen Benjamin, which the only thing I've ever done on Owen Benjamin was when he first came out as a flat earther. He made a video called "I Am Not a Flat Earth Person," and it was basically him admitting to the world that he is a flat Earth person. And I thought that was actually pretty awesome. And so, like, I don't know, man. I commend anybody that has, a public platform that is willing to stand up for what they know to be true, even though they also know they're going to be ridiculed for it. To do that anyway takes a lot of balls, and I always
agree.
commend that.
I agree. I haven't seen him apologize to Eric Dubé, though.
Nope.
So what all was said? I don't know what all was said, though. I don't really follow dude.
He mocked him.
He
mocked him for.
I saw his comedy years ago.
He mocked him for like weeks and weeks and weeks.
Calling him
and
Savanier.
And then he was supposed to come on the show, and that it's hearsay. Like he said, she said about scheduling conflicts, blah blah blah. But Eric contends that he basically blew him off, like invited him on and then wouldn't let him on. Then they never talked. And then all of a sudden Owen leans into it because he couldn't refute any of it, and then he ran with it, and it was a big part of his whatever frequency, daily, weekly production,
his shtick.
And I feel like if you're in the community, like you've done, John, like you've been very gracious to us. You mentioned you didn't want to turn a blind eye, but it's hard to come to grips with someone in such a, community like this, like defrauding or, deceiving people. You don't want to believe it.
Right.
And instead, I think we should give credit where it's due. I mean, we give credit to you. I think
remember.
Owen should have given credit to Eric Dubé.
I remember what you're talking about now. So yeah, I think I did that on a stream where it was like it was like a little 5-minute part of a stream that I was doing, and so I think I do remember responding to something that he said, where he was basically circling the wagons around people like Jaron and Weiss after this whole Antarctica thing, and I don't know, man. Like I know snakes when I see snakes, and there be some snakes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sorry. But I remember what you were talking about now. But so that was the only thing I actually have produced about Owen Benjamin was a video I did years ago, because I thought that I saw some of his comedy in it, and I remembered it was funny. I thought he was funny. So when he came out as a flat earther years ago, I thought that was
the one
awesome.
I was referring to.
The wagons,
the one I was referring to, John. I don't even think it's on your channel. It was on someone else's channel, and it was just a video of you explaining the Coriolis effect. You were explaining it to Owen through the video recording.
To Owen? Oh, that must have been somebody cut that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I've never had a conversation with Owen.
Us either. Although we had Adam Green on the day before he
went on with
Owen. And we totally red-pilled Adam Green on the Globe subject.
If you go back to that first discussion, the Sephirotic pseudoscience discussion, because he brings in a lot of the anti-Abrahamic sort of critique and the sort of the mythicist control grid within the Abrahamic religions, and I think that there's some merit to that line of research, but the second you try to connect the logical vein of argument that he's using to critique religions, the second you point that towards science, it's persona non grata. How dare you assault my sacred cow, basically. And I think that he just doesn't he selectively applies his critical frames of reference, and he turns a blind eye to applications that of that same line of criticism that he just refuses to engage in. He just simply won't do it. I think it's probably the monetary incentive around his audience base. I think it has a lot of atheists in it, and a lot of cult of science worshipers that don't want to have a sort of free thought point of view around certain things. They have their certain things that they cannot question. You know, they'd rather have answers that can't be questioned than questions that can't be answered. So,
yeah.
And I think that's in my book just philosophical immaturity at the end of the day. I think the more he researches and the more he deepens his thinking, the more you're gonna have to question some of these sacred cows, dude. Like, be consistent. But you know,
also in there you mentioned Professor Dave Farina in there, and oh man. There's a guy, a regular globe-tard guy, but he's a very like accomplished molecular biologist, maybe some kind of I can't think of exactly what he is, but the dude is like really good, and he he works with genetic engineering little microscopic doodads and things, right? And dude's totally a Jew for Jesus, so there's always, I always give somebody credit for that. But then he also like is totally against the whole concept. Dude's a total globe-tard, mind you,
right.
But he's absolutely against the concept of like evolution and the whole secular creation account. He feels is like totally against the evidence that you can see under the microscope.
Sounds like he's
from his
he's almost there.
Opinion.
He's almost there.
It sounds kind of like
right.
Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind. Because
he's very like he's right there with Kent Hovind, right? Exactly.
Right.
But so this dude James Tour debated Professor Dave Farina pretty recently, like within the last year. And man, it was just an awful thing to watch because Dave was just basically constantly ad hominem, like the just same old thing he does on the flat Earth side of things. Yeah. And like I'm sitting there rooting for James Tour, but at the same time he's still a damn globe-tard, so it is hard. But I get it though. Yeah. I get it because like people just refuse to question those damn sacred cows, man.
Yeah. Well, and because they don't want to look at the primary evidence of the progenitor of the ideas that are enshrined in the Scili Hall of Fame. They don't want to look at Copernicus's Revolutionibus and how he basically just quote mines Philolaus and Aristarchus of Samos and says, oh yeah, I think that this imagination that Philolaus had about the central cosmic fire, that must be referring to the sun being at the center of the solar system. Those are the kind of arguments that found our so-called operational science. It's unbelievable. And then same thing with evolution. One of the first progenitors of that idea was Gregor Mendel, who was a monk. I think he was a Dominican monk. So a lot of these so-called, facts versus feelings, scientific settled certainty, it comes from clergy gesticulations to a great extent. It comes from people who had a lot of time to come up with justifications and argumentation in favor of certain imaginations.
Also, the further back you go, the greater the ability to read and write.
Yes.
Which is kind of important when it comes to the dissemination of ideas.
And then what have we said here multiple times? Like, what else do the elites or like the academic elites or the sacerdotal class have to do all day but to dream up plausible deniability yarns and defend known absurdities as though they're reality, and come up with very sophisticated, events and conventions and people who have lots of money giving them grants and actuaries and all this kind of stuff. What else better do they have to do with their time except perpetuate the very thing that keeps them insulated from the common man?
Well, actually, that was another topic within the broader theater I thought we should discuss, and it might be a good point to bring in a couple of the callers we've got. But we've talked about AI, we've talked about this mass misconception of the the globe and its impact on politics, really. I think maybe we should get into the politics. And on that note, you know, there's this guy Vashiva, an Indian politician, entrepreneur, technologist, who's out there claiming that the Trump campaign and the Trump administration, so to speak, are using technologies like Palantir and AI. Well, what political campaign is not using those types of technologies to garner an advantage for themselves? But basically, that in Trump's case, they're using it to key off on some of these specifically hot topic issues that we've discussed already, not necessarily in this show, but in other shows, to galvanize the electorate to vote for him. In other words, rigging consensus. Now, you might say bully pulpit rhetoric, you know, to the demographic that they're targeting. But at this point, January 9th, 2025, we don't know what he and the administration is going to do. All we have is talk. And I have been, frankly, amazed over the last 6-7 months how the rhetoric has been so finely tuned to resonate with me, which I never would have expected out of a corporate candidate like Donald Trump. We're talking about fluoride as a national conversation point. That's part of the campaign. Criticism of vaccines, which Donald Trump supported not that long ago. Bringing fluoridation, the national fluoridation program, into a national discourse. The elimination of the federal income tax. That's like a bullet point. Elimination of cryptocurrency capital gains tax. The reshoring of manufacturing. The drill baby drill. You know, within the income tax, I mean, one has to assume there's some sort of battle to be had with the Federal Reserve itself. Doge, eliminating all this government waste. It's all kind of sounds too good to be true. Yeah. It sounds so good. I want that. I'm a vote.
So they create a new government agency to eliminate government waste. So
Right.
I don't know why I think that's kind of stupid.
Right.
But I also am not a big fan of Elon Musk either.
No, I'm not either.
No, and
go ahead. I'm sorry.
He's been the subject of many of our earlier episodes, John, on ZNN, because there's just this weird matrix of influence that I and Xavier and I have talked about and observed between Elon Musk, Donald Trump, Alex Jones, Joe Rogan, and now Dana White and Mark Zuckerberg. Between the MMA and the insurrection and January 6th and InfoWars and SpaceX and its government contracts and Elon Musk and Twitter, it's almost just too convenient.
It's a
all
nice
of this stuff.
Silver platter.
Yeah.
Very nice little silver platter.
And so, John, what I'd like to do, we've had a caller in holding for an hour, and another caller, I think it's a friend of the show, Eric Billig.
Oh, nice.
Who's been on for almost half an hour. I'd like to drop them into the show, and it'll be like a panel. You, me,
style.
You, me, Xavier, this anonymous caller, and what I think is a friend of the show, E. Billick. He's been on, I think he was on our last show or the show before last. But I'm going to drop them into the queue. And I just kind of, spewed out a bunch of topics that are, I think, super apropos. The callers should be on the show now. I want to go to the one holding the longest, the anonymous caller, who's hidden their phone number, so I can't shout out a area code. But welcome to the show, ztitic.news cast, episode 51, first show of 2025. We've got our special guest, Jon The Morgile, on the phone. Anonymous, what would you like to bring up or ask or suggest we discuss for tonight's show?
Oh, what a fantastic day, gentlemen. Dave here. Nice to talk with you again. Mr. Morgile, nice to meet you, sir. You got your boy Big Dog 1111 on the mic here.
Boop, boop.
You caught me right as I'm on the road to the airport to pick up a family member here. So I don't have but more than 10 or 15 minutes.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I'm increasingly feeling like a stranger in a strange land, a la Valentine Michael Smith here. It feels like I can't have an interesting conversation with the non-player characters I interact with on a daily basis, but I'm not as deep into the globe/universe/galaxy stuff as you guys are. My wheelhouses are more AI, blockchain, and finance and economics. But interesting to hear you guys talk. I've learned to never scoff at someone with an alternative viewpoint.
Excellent.
Thank you.
People do that to me all day.
Right. Welcome to the club, my friend.
Welcome.
The floor is yours, so whatever topic you want to bring up, we'll definitely have something to say about it.
I love it. I totally agree that you mentioned earlier AI has, I think the government has much more advanced AI than they've allowed to be released. Elon Musk, they don't just hand out these advanced weapons contracts to anyone. He's launching shit into space that we don't even know about that clearly is DoD related. I'm also I've been very interested in the Mandela effect. And the fact that tangentially how the Simpsons seem to fucking, pardon my French, predict so many things accurately well in advance through the cartoon. What are you guys' thoughts on the Mandela effect?
So that's like what the mainline debunkers like to classify as mass misremembrance syndrome, right? But in point of fact,
accurate. Yeah, that's what they say.
Yeah, they say it's mass misremembrance syndrome. Well, I'll tell you a personal anecdote, and take it with a grain of salt, because it's an anecdote. But the Mandela effect that I have actually personally been affected by is Shazam. Okay. I remember that movie being a double feature at the Dollar Movie down the street in Lubbock, Texas, for about 2 weeks, and then it was really bad sales.
Real.
I remember it. They had Shazam and Lion King side by side, and then like 4 weeks later, it was not in theaters like hardly at all, but then like 4 weeks later, I saw it on the TV Guide. On like the Disney Channel or something. And again, I was one time and I never saw it aired again, but I remember it being very bad.
I can't think of his name. What was his name that was in it? I want to.
Was it Sinbad? Yeah.
Like, I totally remember that. And, like, yeah, there's been a few for me that I really can't explain. Like, I think a big one is the Fruit of the Loom logo, because from what I gather, unless this is all just hype, but from what I gather, Fruit of the Loom, like, got so inundated with, like, harassing comments from Mandela effectors because of the whole cornucopia thing on the Fruit of the Loom logo. And so they made a statement saying that Fruit of the Loom never has, never will, never did have a cornucopia on their logo. But then there's, like, people finding instances of it. So, like, how much of this is socially engineered? I don't know, man. But, like, they had me. Luke, I Am Your Father was sort of a big one for me.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of them. I don't know what it is.
Silver leg.
What's that? So one more time.
Oh, sorry to interrupt you, man. C-3PO never had a silver leg. Apparently, he does now.
Right.
Oh,
yeah.
right.
He always had.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
That one.
Yeah.
And the other one.
The Fruit of the Loom, totally fucking different.
Also, the
Moms Like You choose Jif.
The Jewel song, "Who Will Save Their Souls" with an S at the end.
But so, like, the whole thing, in my opinion, is, like, are we maybe just misremembering? Like, isn't that the easiest explanation? Because I gotta tell you, the namesake one, Mandela, like, I totally remember dude was in prison. It wasn't that he died in prison, that he was like wrongfully imprisoned, and a bunch of celebrities like did a whole thing trying to get him released. Right. And then eventually he was released, right? But like, I remember exactly how that happened, but there's people who seem to remember that he died. But like, I just think, like, honestly, I think that they're just misremembering. There was a bunch of stuff in the news about Mandela, and like, and then also you have this whole element of memories sort of being constructed later on. So like, the human mind has a tendency to fill in blanks and tell itself a narrative based on suggestions.
Right.
And so I think there is a lot of that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a
maybe
hybrid
the Earth
phenomenon.
really is round.
Absolutely.
What's that?
I guess I'm saying, like, I can apply that argument to the Earth not being flat. You see what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
no, I mean, I think they're two totally different things. They're two totally different things, because one can be directly measured and the other is just sort of, so like, human psychology is never going to be an exact science, but measuring things is all, like, geometry is very exact, and it's objective, right? And so there is nothing subjective to direct measurement. Yep.
Fair point. But I mean, most of the direct measurements, like most people would agree, the Earth is spherical, right? So like,
well, most people
direct
have not
measurement
measured.
you have to that being flat?
Most people have not directly measured the Earth, though. That's the thing. Like, like, we are all taught in school how stupid you'd have to be to question the rotundity of the Earth, right? But they don't actually teach you how to measure for it, what to measure for. And most people, even if they knew those two things, they don't have the wherewithal or the gumption to go out and measure for it. So the God's honest truth is, most people, 99% of people, have never even considered going out and measuring the Earth for curvature, because it's a foregone conclusion that everybody knows. But the people that do take the time to actually think about this and figure out exactly what you should be measuring for, and then establish ways to measure for it, by golly, they are instantly and permanently transformed into science-denying ass flat earthers. Yeah. Even Jeranism at one point, and so I'm not sure exactly why he's playing the sort of role that he's playing. I mean, I guess I kind of do get it, but I feel more pity than anything, but not to change the point.
No, I mean, I'll stick to my guns on this, that I really think there's a there, because there have been maybe 15 examples that really fucked me up with the Mandela effect.
Yeah.
Like, I remember in first grade, my teachers coming into the classroom crying, almost borderline crying, because Nelson Mandela died in jail. And I was like,
oh, are you serious?
Oh man, like that. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that fucked me up. But the one that fucked me up the most was,
So that happened to you. Your
man?
teacher. You're telling me that your teacher came into your classroom crying that Mandela died in jail.
Yeah.
What year was this?
1992.
Oh my God! Wow, dude. Wow. Okay. See, I'd never heard anybody say that.
Yeah. And the one that fucked me up the most, you know, the Thinking Man statue.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Most people,
I've seen that. I've seen that. But so to your teacher though. So here's the thing though. That was some shit that she saw on TV though, right? So like, I mean, this whole thing
totally.
that could be like a social
engineering.
Yeah, like a social engineering thing that they've just kept in their back pocket for a number of years, right?
It's true.
I don't know.
True,
I'm just throwing that out there.
Together, 100%. I thought of that too. I'm like, but when you string together all of my experiences, like, how many examples do you need for it to become statistically not a fuckload of coincidences?
Yeah,
You know
no,
what I
that
mean?
is very interesting. Like that, I've never heard that sort of element to it, but that's very interesting.
Yeah, like the Thinking Man statue, whatever dimension I'm from, he's putting his fist on his forehead.
Yeah.
Right. And
well, it depends on the angle. So, like, if you look at the statue from the front, it's pretty obvious. But if you look at it from a different angle, you'll get different effects. So I have seen that one. It is kind of weird, but I would just suggest look at all different angles of it, because when I've done that, I'm like, yeah, that's kind of how I remember it. I mean, it could go either way, but like, again, I think with Occam's razor, with that one, it's probably the simplest explanation. Like, because I know a lot of people think that CERN has something to do with the Mandela effect,
Yeah,
but
I don't buy that.
In my opinion, and take it with a grain of salt, like I think that CERN is a big fat money pit and a big fat pigeonhole for the brightest minds to go and waste their time. Honestly, that's what I think. CERN is.
Or maybe it has some ulterior purpose. Yeah.
It may have some ulterior purpose, but I think its main purpose is like a function of cultural engineering. Really, I think it is more psychological, like a psychological operation.
Right.
In my opinion.
I don't know, like,
because
Oscar Mayer, man, there was a fucking song. Mom's Like You.
That
like,
one's a good one,
My
too.
Baloney has a first name. It's OSCAR. My Baloney has a second name. It's MEYER. Apparently, it's always been MAYER, like, which is complete bullshit. There was a song. Moms Like You choose Jif, peanut butter.
Okay,
There
the
never
other
was
one,
Jif, it's Jiffy now.
Wizard of Oz, the gun that the Scarecrow pulls out. Do you remember that? Do you remember the Scarecrow pulling out a gun?
Yeah.
No, I don't.
If you watch it now,
But lads, I
the
have to
dude
drop. I
pulls
gotta
out a
pick up
gun.
my family member at
The
the
Scarecrow
airport.
pulls out a gun. So that one
Yeah.
kind of tripped me up a little bit too.
That's
I was like, I
hilarious.
saw that a bunch as a kid, and I don't remember the
weird.
Scarecrow having a gun. I remember him just like,
No, he never had a fucking gun.
yeah. You watch him
It's
now.
in
Apparently,
one-
he's
it's
always
in
had a gun.
It's in one scene for
Well,
like, I don't know,
A few
like
seconds.
like a dozen frames.
Yeah, it's
Okay, brother, it's good talking with you, man.
It's very brief.
Good talking to you guys. Stay blessed. Thanks
Hey
for
man,
hearing
thanks
me.
for calling
Yeah.
in. Hell yeah.
Yeah, man, it's good talking with you, brother. Yeah, the Scarecrow thing, like, honestly, when I was a little kid, I probably saw that movie a million times, and like it was something that I do remember seeing as a little kid. But also, it is very brief. Like, if you blink, you'll miss it. You could probably watch that movie 20 times and never notice that. But it's like something to where if you've watched it 500 times and you pause that thing a bunch of times, you're eventually going to pause it on that 12 frame somewhere, you know? And so I'm pretty sure, like, and another one is the Monopoly guy and his monocle.
Right.
Like, I studied things up close when I was a kid. And I remembered specifically that, like he did never have a monocle. It just, if you look at it from a 10,000 foot view, you almost assume that he has a monocle because I don't know. There's a lot of them that are definitely people misremembering, but then there are some of them that I really can't explain either. But I just think that it is, probably nothing to do with something like CERN, which is like, again, a lot of people do go there, but I no longer subscribe to anything to do with atomic theory or any of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is an interesting idea that you could have some sort of interface that's able to access huge amounts of data, for example. And isn't one of the properties of CERN that it has this massive, like, multi-mile subterranean circuit underneath it?
Yes.
That they're supposedly smashing neutrinos and atoms and stuff together. Yeah, that's a cover story, clearly. But could something else be happening in that circuit in terms of all the equipment and in terms of all the infrastructure? Like, why would they build something out like that unless it had some kind of other ulterior motive that we're just not privy to? And it's clearly not an atom
They've
smasher.
been summoning demons.
Right. Well, it's in the shape of a cauldron.
For sure.
It's in the shape of a cauldron.
Yeah.
So are they like summoning like entities from like the astral realm as like zombies that they can like astrally project through these like Minority Report, precog experimental entities that they have? I mean, that's possible. I wouldn't put it past a crazy black budget project to do some shit like that.
I know we're on the ZNN Zetetic News Network, but I am also a firm believer in things like poltergeist, and like honestly, I don't know if it's because there's more people covering it, but I've had enough experiences to know like that kind of thing definitely happens. There are also a lot of people that fake that kind of thing.
Sure.
But like I think that maybe there is something to that. Like I don't know what they're doing at CERN. I mean, I know that they're not accelerating particles to near the speed of light to collide these little hypothetical particles that probably don't actually exist.
That's clearly
into each other. Story. But what are they actually doing? Like I don't know. It seems to me it's more along the lines of the Manhattan Project, where they're paying very bright people a bunch of money to basically cut holes in the fucking donuts. And now you've been pigeonholed the brightest minds onto the garden path through nowhere forever. I mean, that's what I see CERN as, but maybe, maybe they are summoning demons too. Yeah.
Or some kind of like energetic vector that's like a negative harmonic or something that is channeled somehow. Yeah. I think it's possible there because I mean they've been messing with harmonic frequencies for over 100 years. I don't know if you know about the whole Royal Raymond Rife controversy, but he was the one that came up with these actually pretty high incidence of positive results of healing people through these sound chambers and these massive sort of disc arrays that were pointed at specific ailed parts of the human body, and apparently there was like a 75% success rate with this vibrational sort of tonic frequency healing back in the late 1920s, and today 75% incidence of success is like unheard of. They put drugs on the market with like a 10% success rate. They pump billions of dollars into these, petrochemical pills, and it's like, that doesn't help. But so there's a rare publication called The End of Disease, and it features Royal Raymond Rife as kind of the harbinger of this kind of new medical renaissance that was happening right around the end of the 20s. And then guess who swooped in and bought up all the patents, bought out all the medical school curriculum, and put in his version of healing for the country? Mr. Jon D. Rockefeller. So, and actually, if you look at his wealth back then, he was 5% of U.S. GDP in 1939 or something. 5% of the entire country's GDP. So today that would be over $2 trillion. So Jon D. Rockefeller back then was literally like 20 Bezos. He was like 20 Musks. in one.
It was probably way more than that. Like I've heard
Probably more.
estimates
Probably
that
more.
so like on
It
the
can't even be
meeting
calculated at this point.
for the Jekyll Island meeting when they did the Federal Reserve contract originally,
Right.
Like allegedly about half of the wealth of the world was represented in that one train car, or like that one section of train cars.
That's
but
right.
you mentioned the Rife machine. Yeah, I am familiar. I've never seen one or used one, but Bob Nodell from Globebusters, he's no longer with us.
Right.
He claimed that he had one, and he swore by it, although he refused to go to see the doctor, and he ended up allegedly, according to Cammie, dying because of it. So I don't know. But I have heard excellent things about the Rife machine, and I do know that the medical industry just absolutely cannot afford to have cures lurking about.
That's right.
And so they would definitely bury it if it did work. And I can give you another example, which is magnetic resonance therapy.
Right.
A company that I used to contract for sold units to chiropractors only because the medical industry will not allow even medical testing of magnetic resonance therapy, which also has extremely high success rates as well. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, isn't it so? Dave, right now, you're playing this, bizarro CERN commencement.
This is the Gothard-based tunnel opening ceremony.
And it's
after it was complete, and I couldn't find. There was one in like Switzerland or something,
right,
where they had this like projected portal on a big screen, and it was all dystopic looking, and this is as well, but I couldn't find it. But this suffices. We have another caller in the queue, who's actually been on, in the show, but awful quiet as we've dominated the conversation. Area code I think it's 760. I think this is Billy.
How's my audio? Georgia?
I can hear you, sir. You there?
Yeah, is the audio okay?
Yes, sir. Thank you for joining. Thank you for your time. Hopefully our audio has been clear. You've been able to kind of follow the bouncing ball as we've gone all over the place.
Clear. I've just been Turing testing Arimon's Palantir, in real time all the time.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So, what would you like to talk about?
The result of the Mandela effect is because our overlords have time traveling capability.
That's possible.
Elaborate on that. I mean, when you say time travel, is it like H.G. Wells? They step in some sort of chamber.
The way I understand it, it helps keep the law of free will together. So they are going to constantly seal their dimension and not allow any obvious or evidence-based illuminations. So that's a way for them to keep it sealed. This is why it's like you never really see the UFOs. You never really have like hard evidence to break out of the paradigm. So it's kind of a contract that they have with God, and because you need faith to break through.
So it's kind of like a archontic, extra dimensional gatekeeping sort of characteristic. Like there's something going on in the unseen world, essentially, where this sort of hidden higher dimensionality has a presiding factor over our state of affairs. So in that, you mean time travel in kind of that sense, where they're transdimensional and can move in and throughout people's memories and convince them of all kinds of things, perhaps even mass, misremembrances.
I would also suggest, sorry to break in here, but I would also suggest if there were a physical human being that you would associate with, like as a human being, who could live for 800 years. Would they not be a time traveler to you who has an expected lifespan of 75 years old?
Oh, that's a good point.
You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
How do you start a conversation with somebody who's 476 years old? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like they have if they exist, a totally different perspective on human events and the system that we're in.
True.
Yeah, I mean, I think like the Nephilim would fit in that category, and they have absolute knowledge of this dimension, and they're just herding us along, trying to keep us asleep.
Do you sort of?
I think that the evidence.
Yeah.
The evidence definitely supports the idea that. I mean, I think that I would be very surprised if there was not some, immortal sort of vampiric entity sitting on the top tier of all of these sort of interlocking pyramid power structures.
Exactly.
We subconsciously love it through our art.
Right.
Our cultural expression. All the clues are in our own culture here and now.
Yeah. And in art, drama. I mean, look at this like mystery school, modern day, hieratic rite, basically, that they're doing in front of this supposedly purely theoretical, highly technical.
The biggest tunnel in the world.
They're literally doing a mystery drama, like hieratic rite, like mega ritual that you're trying to outdo, the ancient Greeks here. With a huge symbolic interactionist play around the spirits that they're unleashing in this monstrosity. And people are into it. These are...
It's like a fashion show.
Yeah.
You see the walkway there.
Well,
it's a
like
procession.
The transhumanism.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Look at the sphere in the background.
Yeah. Yes, it's inversionary, left-hand magic stuff. Yeah.
We're talking about what's on the video, by the way. If you're just listening, there's a video component to the Zititic Newscast on our YouTube, and we're showing a ceremony from one of these massive tunnel openings, segments of CERN, real productive, smashing atoms beneath our feet, transcontinentally with massive electricity costs, and then these elaborate celebrations when we've successfully deployed our human labor to dig these massive tunnels. It's crazy.
Thank God they're spending our tax dollars on this kind of shit.
Exactly.
Like, where would we be if we didn't have billions of dollars to spend on this absolute fuck show?
Finding the God particle. The God particle.
The God particle. Exactly. No, you said it. I mean, that's the thing that's so like alarming though is people just have this schismatic, disassociative element in their minds where they can look at a scene like this and be like, oh, well, they're just having a cutesy celebratory, ceremony. There's nothing, malevolent going on here.
Now get in the backstage and enjoy your thin crust pizza celebration for digging that tunnel. And be thankful that our AI plasma diggers haven't replaced you already.
Enjoy the show, guys.
Exactly. I want to shift the gears a little bit because you circled the final experiment, John, and reminded us, and I appreciate it, to go back to the final experiment. But we also had a topic circled that we never kind of got back to. It's actually the very first one we discussed, and that's the whole weather warfare situation. And as we've talked about this, like, kind of pretty much every episode, because there's always some sort of event, whether it's a public admission or some sort of quote unquote natural disaster that has occurred locally or elsewhere that is very suspicious. But right now, like I said at the outset of the show, if you turn on any mainstream news, it's all about this fire that's happening. I wanted to kind of transition to that because the core thread, one of the core threads is, again, climate change, aka global warming 2.0 vernacular for controlled weather warfare that is then blamed on some sort of natural act of God to displace entire populations, disenfranchise real estate owners, sequester control over important, relevant land, and to cartographically censor and inculcate really the cosmology that we're talking about. Again, you see the fires, they're already being blamed on climate change, extreme weather, Helene earlier in the year, extreme weather, yada, yada, yada. This blanket blame coming from the global warming ideology. In preparation for this show, I thought it was important to just play a couple minutes of this clip because it's just, we talked about it, again, since our inception, because we knew that it was not to be discussed. It was something that was, at that time when we started ZNN, still, like the UFO subject of ridicule.
Anathema.
And this is like, in my opinion, it's kind of the next frontier in terms of like city council, local activism. Mm-hmm. Because there are instances like in Tennessee where they have bills supported, voted for, approved to quote unquote ban weather modification or chemtrailing, often derided as contrailing. That's the PR propaganda inquiry term used to deride people who are thinking critically about this subject.
Right.
And it's part of our intro, actually. Like the intro to ZNN, you see Elon Musk's Tesla PR stunt where he launched a Tesla car into space. You see the globe. Then you see clips of a geostorm where they have this network of satellites overseeing the globe, and they're injecting different chemicals or combustibles that affect the weather, create tornadoes, yada, yada, yada. And it's, again, like the 2024 to 2025, we're seeing the mainlining of discourse around the UFO subject, which has actually been kind of a slow burn over the last 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 7, 8, 10 years. But the weather thing is like super relevant, pertinent, and you still see these pick your pejorative globetards, weather tards, global warming tards, whatever, suggesting this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. And I just think, like we talked about off air, like the Goebbels saying, you got to repeat. The more you repeat a lie, the more it becomes true. Mm-hmm. The truth is the same way. You got to just keep repeating it.
Right.
And I hate to keep bringing it up because it's, to me, at this point, so basic and like passé. But like, in preparation for this, John and Eric, I didn't even intend to pull this clip up, but I found it, and it's just so mainstream. It's so casual. It was 3 years ago. It's got 1 million views, and I don't know why on the mainstream networks it's not more part of the conversation. Like when we talk about weather forecasts, it shouldn't just be high pressure, low pressure, moon cycle, sun cycle, blah, blah, blah.
Dew point.
How about, you want to talk about man-made climate change? How about we talk about this?
We're here in Santa Barbara County, home to one of the longest running cloud seeding operations in the country. We've got some ground-based cloud seeding equipment right here, and we're gonna get to hear all about how it works and see it in action. Let's check it out. Cloud seeding is the most common type of weather modification, and it has many different techniques and applications. Today, it's mostly used to increase rain and snowfall, reduce the size of hail, and reduce fog at airports.
Traditionally, cloud seeding has been done from the air. So airplanes have had racks on them where these same flares are positioned on the airplane, and the airplane flies into the storm. So in order to reduce the cost to the client and reduce our carbon footprint, we've been able to station these on the ground. Now, we can do this in places where weather permits.
Behind a barbed wire fence designed to keep away curious cattle, the cloud seeding gear awaits the right kind of weather.
So these are referred to as AHOGs. That stands for Automated High Output Ground Seeding Systems. We've got three primary components of our equipment here. The first is the control module that you see behind me. Then we have our actual cloud seeding flares. The cameras for security. It also helps us observe weather conditions in real time and make sure that all of the equipment is operating correctly during a storm. Inside these canisters are the flares with the seeding agents. The canisters are used as spark arresters, so they prevent sparks from reaching the ground. So if we pull off the spark arrestor, you can see the flare inside. The ignition of the flares are controlled from the control module that's behind us. So the white triangle there is a cell service modem, and then the solar panel keeps us powered. Inside we have a battery and then a control board. So the control board interacts with the software.
I think that's enough. I mean, this to me looks like a what
maybe sub $1 million outfit.
Academic grant research project. The longest running ground-based experimental. Casually admitting that we fasten this stuff to planes.
Yeah.
But contrails, guys, contrails. I want to open it up to the floor. John, Eric. I mean,
what do you think of this revelation of the method?
Yeah, they definitely wanted to psyop people with the chemtrails. So, like, they always want people in a state of fear and confusion and distrust, right? And so when people see contrails behaving differently than normal, then it definitely behooves the status quo, or like the way that they want things to go, to make sure that people just run wild with it, right? And, you know, I think that there's probably even maybe something more to it, like another layer to that, where there's probably some free energy element to airline flights.
Yeah.
Where they don't actually have to burn fossil fuels.
Yeah.
And so one of the elements that's going to be released from that sort of a propulsion mechanism could potentially be water vapor. And so if that's the case, they would much rather fear porn everybody with chemtrails than everybody to know that their plane tickets have skyrocketed, even though the price for fuel is free on the planes.
Well, yeah, we've definitely
there's that potential.
Yeah, that's an interesting segue. I mean, we have discussed that particular line of possibility, well, around airlines being, you know, sort of a gas scam or a fuel scam to, you know, limit travel again, sequester the population, keep them under austerity measures with these ridiculous fees to, you know, travel from A to B through the sky. And it's interesting because, you know, just a little over 100 years ago, we had extremely sophisticated, you know, with the airships, you know, we had cheap, affordable mass air transit with these airships. And now all of a sudden it's these, you know, tube lines and stuff going very, very high in the air, very, very fast. And the schematics that they say in terms of the amount of fuel they consume per the volume of what they're proposing this fuel resides in, it definitely doesn't make a lot of sense. But then it can also be true that they are basically spraying us like pests because the technocracy sees us as that. They see humankind as a pest based on their own cosmology. So why not just rob from the plebs in order to poison them through another vector? You know, that's it both can be true.
Yeah, and I want to play this other clip. We played it I think two episodes ago. This was back 3 months ago, 2 months ago, 3 months ago, with Helene. And this is where a kind of a good timestamp for me in 2024's trajectory, one of the bookmarks, if you will, where weather modification became a mainstream topic.
Definitely.
And this is Biden addressing, our response efforts to Helene,
which are pitiful.
But now I want to be clear about something. For the last few weeks, there's been a reckless, irresponsible, and relentless promotion of disinformation and outright lies that are disturbing people. It's undermining confidence in the incredible rescue and recovery work that has already been taken and that will continue to be taken. And it's harmful to those who need help the most. There's simply no place for this to happen. Former President Trump has led the onslaught of lies. Assertions have been made that property is being confiscated. That's simply not true. They're saying people impacted by these storms will receive $750 in cash and no more. That's simply not true.
$750.
They're saying the money is needed for this crisis is being diverted to migrants. What a ridiculous thing to say. It's not true. Really? Now the claims are getting even more bizarre. Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman of Georgia, is now saying the federal government is literally controlling the weather. We're controlling the weather. It's beyond ridiculous.
Well, it's
gotta
not.
Stop. Moments like this.
It's not ridiculous. We just showed
you
a mainline CNET, a mainstream technology publication. It's not. We've shown on our show before. It's
Wait a minute. He was saying it was a conspiracy theory that people are saying that. Like, so he's saying that it's not happening. That's what he was saying?
Well, people with Helene, there were all kinds of different theories, right? Some of them said this was an intentionally created event, like whether you steered the hurricane
It was parked over my damn house for like 12 hours straight.
Right.
For real, dude. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there were people saying that and believing that.
Not just my house. Lots of other people's houses too. But like, dude, I grew up in Florida, man. I've been through lots of hurricanes, and it's like, yeah, hurricanes suck and hurricanes are scary, but like they get on down the road pretty quick.
Right.
Dude, this thing just sat there like ripping up 150-year-old oak trees out of the ground like they wasn't nothing for like 12 hours straight. It just parked here. Right. And I'm all the way in Greenville, South Carolina.
Right.
Like, yeah, like hundreds of miles from the coast.
Well, totally unprecedented, basically.
See,
But of course, it's global warming. Yeah, it's not weather modification. Yeah, of course. It's because we drive cars and have refrigerators that happens.
Here's the thing. It's like I put myself in the president's shoes. Okay. We have that technology.
Yeah.
Okay. We've researched it. We're experimenting with it. Okay. But then to like dismiss any citizen whose tax money is being taken from them to fund said research and development, questioning, like whether or not I use that capability to injure them, it's actually a legitimate question.
Yeah.
And if he were honest, he would be like, well, who knows? We don't know whether they did or not. It is speculative to say they specifically engineered this event because, I mean, maybe we should question whether hurricanes have been natural events forever,
for some time.
That's the story that we're told. We don't have the longevity to know for sure ourselves. We have to basically believe the meteorological record on that. But let's assume that it's a natural occurrence. It's not completely fabricated.
Right.
But we also understand the technology to steer, enhance potentially, or potentially even create
or elongate the duration.
The duration of these events. It's a worthwhile question, not to be dismissed, but given that millions or potentially billions of dollars are being diverted to develop or experiment. We have the United Nations Convention on Weather Warfare in 1974. Like, that was, people thought about it and wrote it down and agreed to it. Why did they do that? They didn't do it for nothing. They didn't do it for a thought experiment. You don't sign international treaties for things that aren't relevant or in existence, right?
Dave.
Yeah.
You think you're actually thinking an honest kernel truth can grow in this rigged system.
Right. And I was going to say, like, if you're expecting Cadaver Joe to be honest about anything, I mean, he is a politician, but he's also, like, Cadaver Joe doesn't know what fucking day of the week it is either. So, like, there's that.
If he's even a real cadaver, he might just be a hologram.
Yeah. Dude, I think he might be Gary Busey in a skinny suit.
And a really good prosthetic mask. Yeah. No, they have.
Dude, I swear, like,
we're witnessing the absolute control of the biosphere and the psychological sphere of the system. As we're merging into AI, or AI is merging into us, the biosphere is merging into under their control. They're controlling the weather, they're controlling the water, and they'll control the air, controlling information, they control energy. We're just at the end cusp, the twilight of total domination.
And they show their hand.
Basically, going to World War III.
Yeah.
When we go into World War III, I don't know if memory will survive. I think the consciousness that you guys are expounding here, which is I'm very grateful for, will probably turn into myth.
Well, I mean, I think that it's kind of like a recession, right? As soon as they admit it, we're actually in a depression. So if they ever admit, if they ever admit that the World War III is occurring, it's because it's already been going on, and they're doing the war of all against all. Because
example of their total control, they have complete control of the narrative.
Right. And full spectrum dominance has always been an agenda.
I think we are getting some complaints that the audio quality is really bad, like we're dropping out on the stream. I don't know. Unless I'm reading this wrong, like, I don't know if you guys have a feed of the output. I do not, so I have no way to verify if that's, like, what the issue is. But I've got...
I don't
noticed a couple of complaints really about the audio.
Right. Oh, weird.
Yeah, and and I'll just keep talking. Then maybe we can try to troubleshoot. But because everybody just believes the top 2 search results that they get on Googling a thing, whatever that thing is. Like, 99% of people, that's how they do their research. They Google a thing, and whatever the non-sponsored top result is, that's the answer, right? And so that's kind of a problem. So, like, when in the future, like when people Google search, I don't know, flat Earth proof Antarctica, the only thing that they're ever going to find from now on is that flat Earth was debunked by flat earther named Jeranism in Antarctica, right? They're never going to find anything in the top 10 pages on, like Admiral Byrd. And so we're already kind of there in that dystopia. Like, it's not looming on the horizon. We're already kind of there. But yeah, like when they start merging, the tech into people's brains, then, that's, I'm going to go ahead and opt out of all that ahead of time. Not happening with me, buddy.
Right.
Yeah, in one sense, we made the last natural-born humans.
One of the last generations.
Last
Possibly,
generations
yeah.
before internet. Totally took
They've
over
already
society.
done the mRNA.
That too.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, the AI and the full spectrum screenification of consciousness. I mean, wherever you go, I mean, it seems like it's kind of difficult to go to a public place and not be bombarded by some kind of screen or advertisement. And we carry around little Imperial probe droids wherever we go. I mean, so social engineering is real. I mean, just 20 years ago, none of this was in existence. People weren't, they was in the very rudimentary forms, but people back then were saying like, oh, the internet, that's an interesting, cool tool that we can, use, and, maybe we can send faxes a little quicker. You could see the naive realism in a lot of the skepticism of the internet at the time, and unfortunately, I see echoes of that with the AI stuff. Oh, AI is just going to be a little tool. Only your competition's going to be using it, so you might as well get used to it.
Blitzkrieg.
Yeah.
War tactic, a blitzkrieg.
Rorschach. Yeah, exactly.
We're under attack.
Yeah, we are.
We're totally under.
We are. We're under like hardcore, multiple angles, multiple offensives, highly sophisticated, highly funded. I mean, it's nasty.
I'm in a cave just trying to protect my soul.
Yeah.
So wait a minute. So you guys don't think that Trump is the reincarnation of some Hebrew king?
He's the third Trump.
Come on, guys.
In the Bible.
Oh yeah, the third Trump. Oh my God, man. Like, honestly, it is such a shock to me that we've come so far in the truth community, and then I'll still see people that on other things I sort of kind of trust and respect their judgment, but then they'll just come out with just really crazy things about, I don't know, the political scheme, that it's just like, that was one of the first things to go for me, like long before I even fell into the whole, globe earth skepticism thing, the political scam, the false dichotomy that is the, Republican Democrat dialectic. That has been long gone from my sort of paradigm for a while, forever. But I don't know, it's just shocking to me that you're right. Like, it's almost as if I kind of tend to think that we're probably going to see, I don't know, it could go either way. I'm really interested to see how the next week or two plays out, because wow, it could totally go either way.
Yeah, I mean, we could arrive at Inauguration Day with a dead elected president. I mean,
it's possible.
Even if you believe that, like I do, the assassination attempt was potentially staged, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
they could stage it, and it will just be the reality that we're living, right? So all this Palantir talk that resonates, all this exuberance in the financial markets because of the anticipated changes, it'd just be totally wiped away in an instant. Instant, with just a persona assassination.
Right.
And that's the risk of creating these messiahs, right? These messiah these saviors, and it kills me too, John. I mean, you talked about your mom. Similarly, in my life, I have people who are very hopeful and very optimistic. Their entire life has changed with the election. And I'm happy that they feel good and that they're happy and that they feel a renewed sense of optimism. But I fear as well, in a correlated magnitude, that they will be equally disappointed as they are exuberant. Because of
no doubt.
the things that you guys bring up, Jon and Eric, that like we are highly speculative here at ZTitic News. We don't know, but we're honest about that. But because we don't know, like, we have to be real about the potentials that we have seen in history to take place, like these mass misconceptions, these political theaters. This yeah, you know what I'm saying?
And I'd connect that dot.
I don't know who's talking right now, but I did drop in another caller beyond Jon and Eric. It's area code 843. I think you're talking. Hey, who we got
James.
there?
James and Charles with Corey.
Is this James Ward?
Yes.
Welcome to the show, James Ward. I appreciate you calling in and waiting patiently for almost an hour to join the show. Let me give a brief introduction. I know James. James, on this show, my name is Dave. That's my stage name, if you will. James and I met many years ago, like 12 years ago, 11 years ago, locally in the anti-fluoride activist network here in North Carolina. And we've stayed in touch over the years, and I invited James on the show to weigh in. And at some point in the near future, we hope to have him in person in the ZTitic News studio, where we can really dive deep into your understandings and perceptions of what's going on. But hopefully you've been listening to the show, James, and can follow the bouncing ball a little bit, and would love to hear, like, based on what we've been talking about, what you'd like to say or ask. Welcome to the show, man.
Thank you. No, great show, guys. Having a blast. And I wanted to chime in all throughout this fun talk. I was just kind of pointing out in the beginning, y'all know it's flat, but y'all don't really talk about the firmament. And so in my experience, I'll just tell it real quick. I decided to make fun of flat earthers one day, put on a documentary called 200 Proofs the Earth Was Flat. And I tell everyone this story, strangers. I tell everyone. I was just making fun of flat earthers. I got to number 15. I turned it off, called my dad. He said, "Don't ever call me about this again." Hung up on me. He got triggered. I was like, there's no curve. I was like, there was a curve when heliocentrism was introduced, which is heliosorcery, which is hilarious. I was like, they were lying from the beginning. They were Freemason, Satanists, then scientism, occultism, Kabbalism. It all connects theoretical physicism. It's the religion of science. And so I was like, there's no curve. And then I ended up going to the Great Lakes, seeing Chicago 16 miles away. And then, when I immediately understood it was not moving, we're not going 2.7 million miles an hour, trust your senses. It's so obvious. But my mom told me when I was a little kid, heaven's above you, hell's below you. And I go to school, and school's like, there's no heaven. You're on a spinning ball going, there's billions of light years of nothingness in dark space. There's no heaven, not literal. And then that's what people say, you can't read the Bible literally. And then I was like, wait a minute, there's no curve, water's flat. I can admit there's a dome. I knew it was a flat, and I was like, maybe 2 weeks later, I was like, I'm not going to say there's a dome. I'm not going to say it. And then I was like, wait, there's a dome. It's called the firmament. It's mentioned 7 times in the first chapter where God tells you where you are. And so immediately I was like, oh, that's why they want you to think you're on a ball spinning. It's the biggest lie, because heaven is literally above you. And every generation, every culture, every religion knows that except for the one, the religion of science, which you've all been indoctrinated with, within being born into the lie in Babylon. We're in Rome, the new world, new mystery Babylon. And so it all became extremely literal, because once you figure out it's flat, the whole model is showing you, it mentions 1,000 times in the Bible, heaven is above you, at least 1,000. So I was just surprised that no one's really thrown that out from the get-go, because that's where I went immediately. And then I think right about the same time, and I didn't believe in the Bible. I was raised with it, but didn't believe in it until the lockdown. When the lockdown came, I was like, I know they're lying. This ain't right. And I was like, fair question. Does Bill Gates and Fauci worship Jesus or worship Satan? I thought that was a valid question, since they wanted to inject the entire world. And it turns out, after a little bit of research, they're eugenicists, Satanists, and they've been like that the whole time. And they tell you 1,000 times over, because they're egomaniacs. They're psychopaths. But they sold their souls. And they're all in on it. And then 4 years ago, I was like, Trump's the only one who can save us from this crazy democracy. And then I was like, oh, he was in on the stolen election to get everyone jabbed. That whole thing was a con. Then I realized the elections are all cons. Then I was like, oh, yeah, the politics. Biden was never Biden. On day 1 of his presidency, I was like, that's not him. Can anyone else say that that's not him on day 1? I was like, that is not him. And then we saw 20 different actors. Took me a while to say it. Jim Carrey, 100% was one of them. The Mission Impossible movie number 8 is coming out, I think, this year. They pull off the mask. We've all seen the videos. We've all seen all the videos of everyone in a mask. Literally a political demon, shape-shifting actor, clone, cyborg show. They're all clowns, and they're all in on it, and it's just to take your soul with the pharmakia, with changing your DNA. Tell everyone God made you in his image. When you take an experimental GMO shot that changes your DNA, well, you're marked, Bluetooth, quantum dotted, all the above, but the nano mesh is in your brain, downloaded to the AI quantum computer. There's receipts. They tell you 1,000 times over. It's also in every single movie. Every single movie is about this ending. I mean, I could ruin every movie for you. The talent I picked up, because I started telling people I learned a new language when the lockdown came, which is satanic symbolism. And I'm like, oh, all the logos, all the symbols it's literally the Freemasons. It's all symbols. We've seen them our whole lives. I just dug deep into it to the point that I sounded crazy to certain people, but I'm like, no, this is just information. And the Bible says God loses a lot of his children for a lack of knowledge. And I always applied that to we have a phone in our hand. You can either waste your time with entertainment, or you can just literally figure out your research and figure out what's going on. And I don't like to say the term rabbit hole, but when all this started, I started going down every rabbit hole you can go down, and every ending ended up being Jesus every single time, because all this is a lie. And that's what he said. Don't be deceived. He said it when he was talking about the last generation and the end of the world in Matthew 24. First thing he says is, don't be deceived. And in Hebrew, the word is NASA, for deception. So that's why it's chosen to be NASA. And so, yeah, it's hilarious. I try to wake everyone up, but, some people are choosing the lie, and some people want the truth. So I admire you talking about this, because all I ever talk about to anyone, literally strangers, first thing I ask is, how many jabs did you get? Do you think the shot in the head was real or fake? And do you know it's flat? And, of course, the shot in the head was fake. I knew that as soon as I saw it. But read Revelation 13. Yeah. Trump is the father of the vaccine. He's the Antichrist. Elon is the false prophet of Revelation 13. He brought the 666. And here's the window right here. In 2016, you can look up the video. Elon Musk is getting interviewed, and he says, no, we don't have to cut open your skull to inject a chip to connect you to AI. We just inject you in the arm. And then it hacks your blood, hacks your brain, creates a nano mesh, and you're connected to the AI computer. And you're patented then with a 060606 patent number with Microsoft. That's the cryptocurrency, the new, mark of the beast you can't buy or sell. And that's what also brought me back to the literal Bible, because I was denied that. I was like, there's no way. I denied it at least a dozen times. I was like, it's not the mark of the beast. But then I started doing the research, and then for the last 4 years, it's validated over and over. It's just, there's nothing but proof. So thanks, guys. I love to share.
So yeah,
I think dude might be right about a lot of that stuff, man. Like
Yeah.
a few things at the beginning I was kind of like a little bit disagreeing with a couple things, but I gotta say, like, yeah, dude, you're probably spot on with a lot of that. And a couple things you just said it never really occurred to me, but yeah, I think that probably does fit. You mentioned the what's that?
I tell everyone, it's the fire that comes down from heaven. That's, SpaceX and Space Force, but the rockets that Elon Musk lands. And then his Starlink is obviously, if you saw the video, it's just drones, there's drones. In daytime, you can see the video. And the fire from heaven's got to be the lasers. I saw the video from the White Sands military commercial where they say we have a laser that can go 60 miles away and burn a hole through your car engine block. And that was Lahaina. So all the fires that are happening, it's like predictive programming.
Easy SimCity type activity. Click of the button.
Mm-hmm.
If it takes a cigarette butt out the window of your car, how easy would it be for a megawatt laser on a balloon platform? Which, by the way, our cover art for today's show was AI generated. I put this prompt into this Pakistani-made AI app. I was like, let me get some ancient architecture in a futuristic New Jersey city with bombs blowing off in the background, a Cybertruck, and a crowd of people looking away from the damage in a VR headset with drones and balloon platforms in the background. And they didn't put a Tesla Cybertruck like I asked. They put some sedan, but I superimposed a Cybertruck in there. But the AI did put Tesla on the balloon platforms in the background. And I think it's just very I think it says a lot about what's going on right now.
Well,
one thing I did want to... Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, just to respond to what James was saying earlier, I think that one thing that you could consider is that the Bible itself is kind of a script or kind of a manual in some way. So I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that the world powers are using it as a script to legitimize their fraudulent designs over how to control the human soul, the human mind, etc., etc. And I wonder to what extent they're going to use AI, because going back to Big Dog, there's a Mandela effect within the Bible. What animal does the lamb lie down with in God's kingdom? Most people think it was the lion, but it's actually the wolf. Wolf in sheep's clothing there. I wonder if it's possible for the world powers to essentially just basically re-script the Bible in a completely different way that generates essentially a new historical paradigm where they just enshrine themselves as the chosen. And
That's what Satan does. Inverts everything from the stories of the Bible. He knows the Bible better than anyone. So he inverts every story. And that's why I tell people, I'm like, if you know the Bible and you read the Luciferian contract and agenda of Satan, watch a movie and you'll be able to see both sides, and you'll see the mockery of the Bible and the inversion. And that's all I point out to everyone, the inversion and everything, and that's the plan. Because I was like, when this started, I was like, are the rich people who run the world, are they literally copying the Bible? Or is this the prophecy telling us what they're doing, but they know they're doing it, and they're just mocking it along the way and showing everyone in plain sight, because the rule is they have to show you before they do it.
Right.
And so, I mean,
I think
what's next is,
it could be a combination. Again, it could be kind of a both and there. That they're not only do they see the Bible as a manual to perpetuate their egregores of control, but they want to fulfill the very thing that they wish to blaspheme. So it that's this sort of schizoid psycho, control oligarch realm that we live in, is this parasitic force is influencing humanity on so many levels. We can't fully inventory it without some kind of a pneumatological or a spiritual frame of reference. And whether the Bible in its current form, I think most of the Bible has been lost. We only have a very small fragmentary residue of what was really ultimately supposed to be communicated through the ages as ancient wisdom. And we only have a small shell or a shadow of what the true wisdom actually is. But with that shell, we can still protect ourselves to an extent, as long as we keep in the forefront of our minds the scale of the deception on levels that we would rather not like to admit. And that can actually include the Bible itself and the organizations and the institutions and the powers in the world that have promulgated this limited image of what biblical wisdom or ancient wisdom and the cosmologies therein were all about. So I think that
I didn't believe in the Bible when this started. Like, I went through enough of it and said there's too many lies. But then when the 666 came and the DNA changed and the warning of the nation that deceived all nations with pharmakia, the United States has more pharmaceutical money than anyone else. Trump and Elon were the two butt buddies together who brought the mark to the world, deceived the world with lies, and they sit together at the MMA fights like the current Caesar watching the gladiators, which is the gayest sport that there is in a family restaurant. It's ridiculous. They're always together and about to change the money system. I mean, it's literally just happening in front of us. And when I tell people this, I'm like, you can't negate the 666 patent number. That's literally a self-replicating nanobot lipid nanoparticle inside people feeding off of them, which is the black goo, killing the children, turbo cancer, killing the athletes of the world, myocarditis, 1,291 side effects. I mean, it's literally nothing but lies and deception to change their DNA, which is an experimental shot from the government, which is insane. But Trump coming back, I told everyone he's coming back because it was a part of the plan. Biden was literally fake. That whole thing was just a fakery for you to pick the lesser of the two evils, which would be the Antichrist, when you voted, a month, 2 months ago. You weren't supposed to vote. It's worship. You're not supposed to worship the beast. You're supposed to overcome the beast system, overcome the world. But he wants to worship in place of the Savior. He'll come back and be the Savior. Elon will be the director of efficiency. And if that's not a red flag for everyone, they're both literally from satanic billionaire families, fulfilling the prophecies of the Bible. And they know what they're doing as well. They know 100% every word they say. I'm not kidding. If you read Revelation 13, the false prophet tells you to worship the Antichrist. Well, as soon as Elon Musk found out he was shot in the head, Elon Musk went back to the rally place where he was shot in the head, jumped up and down and said, "I'm dark Gothic MAGA. Vote for him. I endorse him." Like, it's literally Revelation 13. And when he got shot in the head, I'm like, is that really the shot in the head? I know y'all have probably seen the Illuminati card game from 1995.
Of course.
With the card of Trump and a bullet going past his ear. Dude, it's all scripted. It's so far back. It's literally, they've had hundreds of years to play this manipulation with the slaves' minds. And that's what y'all are kind of depicting through and seeing it. And then right before I came on, one of you were like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I love to tell people I know exactly what's going on, because every day I validate it with new information, knowledge, wisdom, literally supporting everything from the book of Revelation, and then all the way back to the gospel, all the way back to Genesis, all the way to page number 1. When you find out Satan hates the book of Genesis and the book of Revelation more than any other book, it gets more fascinating. And there's lies, but the flat earth is there. You guys already know. It's so much fun to just expose the evil, which is what you're supposed to do and what you're doing. The Bible says, prove everything, test everyone's spirit, and that's my favorite thing to do at this point. Tell everyone about the massive lies, expose it, talk about the truth. You're supposed to declare the marvelous works of the Lord Almighty. That's the flat Earth. It's literally page 1.
Well, one thing I would just interject in here is I think that we really need to be careful with confirmation bias because things sort of jive with our understanding. And I'm specifically talking about the King James Version Bible, okay, and also translations of ancient texts, okay? So there's a lot to this, and we're probably not going to unpack all this. Now, I will start by saying I agree with most everything you're saying, but I also have come to the doubtless conclusion that the modern Christian canon that we accept as gospel is a deception. Okay, now that isn't to say that
James was a Freemason who had a Freemason rewrite it. That was 1611. I go back to the 1532. The Geneva had 80 versions.
Okay, fine. But okay, so let me say this then. So like the Book of Revelation is something that is definitely a great book. Awesome. But like, what exactly is Revelation? So what we're told is that Revelation is John at Patmos is like the last thing he ever wrote. And then somehow or another that writing made its way to whom? I guess to Paul. But the thing is,
it was like 7 churches. Identical.
7 churches.
The book to 7 churches specifically, so no word was ever changed. So the most validated book that is pretty interesting, it opens like that. It goes to 7 churches, was never changed.
So they have the originals of Revelation, is what you're saying?
Well, that's why
this is news to me.
He says this is being written and sent to 7 churches so that it's validated and not one version would ever change from the original text. And that's why it's the most interesting book, because no book starts out by saying this is written and sent to 7 churches so it never changes a one word. And that's the most fascinating thing. And then it's prophecy that I denied for a portion of my life, saying there's no way this is provable. And then all of a sudden,
well, I'm not denying the prophecy. I'm not denying the prophecy. What I'm saying is I don't think that we can take it as anything literal. I mean, even if it's 100% true and literal translation, we're still talking about the dream of a dude that, you know, it's very, like, the chain of custody is very precarious.
Right.
And the point that I'm making is, like, when I'm taking it all the way back to, like, Roman Emperor Constantine. Before then, okay, you have the Apostle Paul, who never knew Jesus, never met Jesus, never had a drink with him, never heard one of his sermons, and was actually allegedly a professional hunter-downer of Christians with his posse of soldiers. And he was fully backed by the Sanhedrin and the Roman Empire to hunt down Christians and go get them. Now, somehow or another, he ended up becoming like the editor-in-chief of the entire thing that we now call the King James Version Bible. I know there's been other iterations, but my point is we have to be very careful of the wolf in sheep's clothing that goes all the way back to the beginnings of the alleged Christian church, which is Paul. So with that, I mean, I think that's what I'm saying. Like, we have to be very careful. Like, for one other example, like words like the firmament. Firmament is an English word that denotes something firm, but what the original intent of that word, the Hebrew was rock, R-A-Q, or rakia, which simply means expanse. And so to transliterate that into firmament it is a mistranslation, and there are lots of those, but it goes way beyond just mistranslation. And like I don't think we're going to get into like the entirety of what I'm talking about, but I just think that we need to be very careful not to fall to the trappings of confirmation bias. Is my point.
Right, and then
that's interesting. So
as well,
I don't know
to ruach,
what everyone on
breath.
the call includes. What do you think is above whatever the flat Earth is then?
What is above the flat Earth?
I mean,
well, we definitely have the celestial luminaries. I mean, you can call it the firmament. Well, I'll call it the expanse. Whatever. It doesn't matter what we call it. I just think it's disingenuous to say that there's a dome or something firm when I've never seen any evidence for that. And so, like, if our positive claim is that there is a snow globe dome with some sort of a foundational base south of Antarctica, and then people go south of Antarctica and there is no foundational base.
Right.
So what, now the flat earth is debunked again because there's no dome base? No, I mean, I think that the dome is an interesting concept. There probably may be a dome, for all I know there is, but I've just never seen any evidence for it. And I think that, so like, if you try to approach new people to this topic from a biblical standpoint,
right.
If they're already Christians, that's all gravy. But if they're like 99% of netizens and they're atheists,
right.
It's not going to score any points. In fact, you're going to lose half your audience in the first 4 breaths.
Correct.
However, once people come to the realization that the ancient goat herders of the Fertile Crescent were actually right about their cosmology, it'll bring 99% of people back to the Bible to revisit this, which is definitely something we need to do. I mean, we cannot just discount these ancient texts. And I am definitely a Christian, but I just think that we need to be very careful of the wolves in sheep's clothing that are hidden within the scarlet robes and golden chalices of the Vatican itself.
Right.
Sure, yeah, they're all evil. And I tell people, I didn't believe in the Bible or Jesus because he thought the earth was flat. And everyone in the Bible thought the earth was flat. So how could I believe in that book at all until I laughed so hard I figured out it's flat and they're all right. It was only the religion of science that's indoctrinated
There's a lot of people like
here in
that.
America.
There's a lot
of people
versions of that too,
who associate the biblical text with flat earthism and use that as the discounting mechanism.
Definitely.
The dismissal
Yeah,
mechanism.
I did.
Absolutely.
I did. It was an experience. So I mean, if you find out it's flat, I'm just like I'm kind of almost shocked to find someone who knows it's flat, like literally, but hasn't. It took me. I said that earlier. It took me like 2 weeks to admit the firmament dome is real. You can see rockets hitting the firmament. There's the 2014 amateur rocket, fastest rocket ever, hitting the firmament with like 4 GoPros on it. And then Elon Musk, all SpaceX does is hit the firmament. That's what you see at night.
Right, only that's not what happened though, man. I'm sorry, and I'm not trying to be like a stick in the mud, but that is not what happened with the Go Fast rocket launch, man. What happened was
tell him what happened.
So what happened was that Go Fast rocket launch went up, and then there was the thing suddenly stopped spinning, and there was a sound. It went pew, and it stopped spinning, and then it decoupled from the primary stage, and it went boom, and that's when it separated. That's all it was. But people like Dave Weiss, Flat Earth Dave, went around saying, "Oh, the rocket hit the dome. The rocket hit the dome." And I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm not. But like, so many people. Like, I've made probably 3 videos trying to explain this. Like, that's not what happened. And when people do, and I'm not calling you out or anything, but when people make those claims, it really sets a lot of our work back because it's not what happened. And if people go and like double check that sort of thing, and they see, oh my God, that guy was totally full of shit, no offense, then it like, and I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry, man. I'm such a butthole, and I apologize. Like, I'm rough around the edges. You got to take me with a grain of salt, but.
That's fine. Like Operation Fishbowl, they were shooting the firmament with bombs trying to break it. All the other videos, you're saying all the videos I've seen of rockets hitting the dome.
Those were nuclear. Those were military videos of nuclear bombs, dude.
Right, but all the effort and all the videos of what the modern day rockets hitting the firmament is not hitting the firmament. Like, what is it doing there?
Here's an explanation.
No, nothing has ever hit anything up there.
Right.
Nothing's ever hit anything up there. That's what I'm saying.
Nothing
and like the
hits
stuff
anything.
from
What happens is
Fishbowl,
it fails
like
to
that
go
was a hoax.
higher. It reaches a certain height and it explodes. It can no longer combust and go any higher. That's one of the disproofs of the whole vacuous chasm. It's not proof of a dome, but it's a strong argument against a vacuous chasm. That actually these crafts don't go where they say they go. but they're not necessarily hitting a
I know that.
firmament. Yeah, right. But they're not necessarily hitting a firmament.
Okay,
They're reaching a certain operational height, and then the velocity terminates. They can't go any higher, and there is a fixed height at which combustible craft can go, and it's not more than about 400 miles high in a vertical fashion. You can't really exceed that height. There's no craft that can go higher than that. So that's why, you know, the satelloons and the fake industrialization of satellites and all this stuff, it's meant to legitimize this orbs in the void cosmology, which is a vacuous chasm that comprises 99.99999999999% of everything. And, you know, we're basically a speck of nothing within nothing circling nothing. It's a nihilist, exterminist cosmology. To me, I think you have to advance the concept on a more philosophical line in order just to not get pigeonholed. See, that's the problem with the biblical cosmology angle, is that it immediately pigeonholes you as an evangelist and not a free thinker. So that's my reservation with that line of inquiry. And I tend to support the skepticism within the biblical cosmology vantage point. However, I think on a technical basis, it's not actually the foundational issue at hand.
It's not enough.
It's not enough
to say it was said in the Bible, therefore it is.
Well, that is absolutely true. I would just say
flat, and then I figured out it says it 1,000 times. That became statistically intriguing to figure out. I realize where I am, but I'm still intrigued that you also say it's flat, but there's no firmament.
Well, we say that the current 26-mile spherical projection of an orb in a void cosmology is foundationally faulty, empirically unprovable, and is ultimately pseudoscientific. We come at it from a technical truth claim point of view. We don't inject any religious content into the discussion.
Yeah. Well, they all worship Satan. All the liars that you're calling out, though, literally, just who do they worship? And
but this is where I'm coming from it.
Yeah, go ahead.
Coming at it from is not about who's being worshipped or anything. What I'm saying is one of the hardest lies for me to let go of was the concept of infinite space, right? Infinite space where all the planets and suns and galaxies exist. Everybody knows an infinite space, right? But the thing is that is all hinging on the curvature of the Earth. So if there's no curvature, then infinite space is just done, right? And so the vacuum of space goes right out the window. And so this sort of necessity for a dome also goes with it. So like the concept of a dome is kind of marrying flat Earth with infinite space in a lot of ways. And I think that's a mistake because the two are mutually exclusive. Now, I will say that I think that there is a lot of biblical clarification and it'll do wonders for your faith, this revelation of flat Earth. But again, you also have some Christian foundation in your background, or even, Abrahamic religion foundation in your background. There's a lot of people that don't. And anytime you even mention a thing like, books of Revelation or anything, like you're turning a lot of people off. Not me. Like, honestly, I'll talk about that sort of thing with you all day long, but most people just won't. And so I've sort of kept the two separate. I mean, I've got scores of videos about all kinds of topics like this on my channel, but when it comes to flat Earth stuff in particular, just as a personal decision for me, I do not talk about anything religious in terms of trying to prove it, right? Because the proofs are perfectly standalone, perfectly demonstrable, without any sort of, who do you worship and what's your belief in, what is your scriptural book, right? So.
Yeah, proof. Absolutely. You got to want to know. You got to know to see it. And the people who get turned off just don't want to know. And trust me, I've had conversations with every single person I've almost come across in the last 4 years when I figured it out. It was all around the lockdown. All this stuff started for me. And so, I just changed everything the way I saw the reality. And I was thankful for it. I repented. Just started telling everyone else, it is all spiritual. It is about your soul. And so I tell people this: if you made it the last 4 years without getting injected up your nose, in the forehead, or in your arm, and changing your DNA, if you can make it to the year apparently 2030 without being nanobotted, then you'll be a select few of purebloods. And that's going to be hard because the next phase that's about to come when Trump and Elon come in, whatever's about to happen, whenever it falls off, it's going to fall. And the test is going to be even greater. So, I mean, you guys sound like you got a good shot at, figuring out the truth. But the battle is just beginning, I suppose, because it's only going to get worse. All the people who fell for it, I mean, when do you think the climax is? I thought the climax was going to be here by now, but what's going to happen whenever the jab's going to really kick in? That's going to be happening when Trump comes back, because they're going to blame it on the next pandemic, and it's just going to be chaos. So, I mean, I tell people God's wrath is about to come. Call me an alarmist, but with all the dots adding up, where's the climax? And I'm pretty sure the climax is coming in year one of the last president we're ever going to have. And so, again, I just
Thank
people
God.
go home. Yeah, well, every day's getting closer. Everyone has to wake up in the very end, and so it'll be a massive wake-up call for so many people. But I would tell you guys, just look at the heaven part of the firmament on page 1. I just can't help but refer people to that one. That's why it's there. Don't be lost with what you're looking at. Even Von Braun on his tombstone is Psalm 19:1.
Well,
which
so,
is
but here's
exactly
the thing.
point
It goes back to the translation
everyone.
of firmament, though. That rock it pertains also to ruach. It's the similar Hebrew root, which means breath. And actually, the heavens, if anything, if you go outside and look up at the heavens in an open field, you breathe really deeply. Correct? Just automatically.
Oh, you look up.
Yeah, you look
Right.
up and you breathe in deeply. So I think that we're dealing with a kind of sonoluminescent etheric substrate that I don't think is necessarily a hard barrier in the way that it's conceived as like a planispheric dome. But honestly, another conception is the sort of transorganic one, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with the natural form, the ctenophore, but this is a deep sea creature with natural bioluminescent quality and is basically like 99% water. So if we're going to look at the waters above, waters below, we're actually in a type of water in the sense that we breathe. So the air itself is not just empty space. And that's what the whole globe cosmology wants you to believe is it just a vacuum. Everything that we experience, our breath, gas pressure, it's just a gradient that eventuates into a vacuous chasm. Don't worry, don't trouble your little head about the medium that is the air and what it's connected to. And I think it's connected to the ether, the breath, the pneuma, the soul. That the breath is actually a resonant sonoluminescent quality that actually perhaps generates a cyclical portal in a way.
I know it's connected
You know,
to.
I think that there are very transcendental possibilities here.
It's connected to the whole environment, and it traverses the Earth in synchrony.
Yeah.
You know.
Sort of like a toroidal field. In a way.
Well, I'm actually being sarcastic because they allege, the airplane anomalies that, like, when you fly, you're going, the whole environment is attached to the Earth,
right?
Through gravity,
or what they call gravity.
Yeah.
And again, I think that this is a etheric medium composition equilibrium sort of dimension.
Right. So like let me add something. So like to your point. So I think that what we're dealing with is a rotational electromagnetic vortex. I think that the Earth is obviously a dielectric plane, and anytime you have magnetic acceleration, you're going to have some funky things going on. But just to throw this out there, I don't think that helium balloons rise up, miles and miles into the air because they're so light, right? I think that, you have the whole buoyancy argument, and I get that, but I tend to see that, I kind of see this place as sort of like a simulation, and so matter is organized based on sort of a top-down plan that is like a matrix that is, it's not exactly physical, it is not exactly energy, but maybe we can catch glimpses of it when we see things in the firmament or like the stars. But yeah, I'm totally of the mindset that this simulation sort of thing that we're living in is definitely created by, God, the creator, okay? But it is better stated as a simulation rather than a physical realm, I think, because of the sort of things that I'm artistically throwing out there and seeing what sticks. So y'all tell me what you think about that.
Okay, so my issue with the idea is that the term simulation is a little bit of a betrayal of the depth of the concept that you're trying to convey. See, it's a simulation.
So simulation is a bad word. It's a bad word. Yeah, that's not exactly what I'm trying to convey.
Exactly,
but I think it's a better word.
A better word in
than
my
like a
in my vocabulary is an emanationist phenomenological realm, right? So there's an emanation that's actually occurring where we don't perceive every single dimension or every single sense factor that exists. We only have a limited purview through our empirical set data, which is perfectly sufficient to determine all sorts of knowledge, but it has a horizon. It has a there are things that are occulted from it. And it's in this unseen elemental quality, this sort of higher dimensional property of sense experience, that we're trying to sort of grasp at a little bit more rigorously, I think, going forward. Because we've already preoccupied ourselves with the sense impression empiricism that's projected onto the physical world. And with all the imaginations and all of the musings that go along with that, it's still been very much within the realm of human gesticulation. So, in so saying, perhaps it's more of a kind of co-creative, interdimensional, emanationist engine of sorts. And so I kind of understand why you would want to call it simulation in that sense, because there is a simultaneity to things. Things are almost programmatically and algorithmically situated in such an ordered fashion that cannot be the result of random chance occurrence. So in that sense, yes, I see what you mean, but the problem with simulation is that it has a
I don't think that there's some graphics card running this simulation.
No.
I think that it exists within the mind of the creator.
Oh,
right?
okay. Oh, I see.
But that's what it is. It is all based on like thought, though, right? I don't know. I just see that the physical realm as being more the illusion, and the spirit realm, if you will, as being the actual truth, right? And so this construct is the illusion, right?
Right. This is the sort of lower vibrational formation of the total dimensional expression. Right. Yeah. I see what you mean there.
Yes.
So
that's what I think.
Yeah.
I was gonna just add, well, if that's the case, then what's our purpose? And it would have to still be to say thanks, give gratitude to the Creator. But I wanted to mention back when you mentioned the breath. I thought that was interesting, because in the Bible it says God breathed life into man,
right,
and Jesus breathed the Holy Spirit into those who were followers, and then the false prophet breathes life into those who are marked, and that would be the zombie apocalypse.
That is very yeah. So that's what I'm saying, that there are kernels of wisdom in these ancient texts. Absolutely. I think that they're just sort of shadows of the actual wisdom that was experienced by the people who were transformed by these archetypes, by these accounts, by these testaments. So, in that sense, I think
a point that I would make, to that, I would just say, to me, it's amazing that Revelation made it into the Bible, but the Gospel of, say, Thomas or Mary Magdalene did not, amongst others.
Sure.
To me, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Anyway, not to interrupt you.
I mean, do y'all think the zombie apocalypse has anything to do with the 666 inside everybody's body who's now not considered human by the Supreme Court because they took a genetically altered experimental shot? Has anyone covered that one at all?
I mean, that sort of goes into the sort of
say it one more time.
The admiralty law, like straw man persona, sort of counterfeit identity, digital chattel slavery paradigm that the tax system exemplifies, etc. Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I mean, this goes into the whole human farming sort of aspect of what this realm really is all about, why it is a sort of lower dimensional expression of the true dimensional nature. And perhaps it's because elements of ourselves that have incarnated in our present form are actually a source of energy or food for higher order entities that perhaps themselves are fallen, or are not even the superlative, super creator, so to speak. But they may, in fact, have presage and influence and kind of ownership over this realm in some way. And we don't know.
I've been finding very, very interesting veins in that regard in the Nag Hammadi Gnostic scriptures, which, of course, they are sort of poo-pooed and, frowned upon by, the Vatican. And so that, to me, that's why they're all the more interesting, because I've sort of come to the conclusion that the actual Christians, right, so the followers of Christ, were basically shut down, hunted down, killed. Their teachings were basically buried. And then we were given this sort of faux chimera of Hebrew mysticism and the quote-unquote gospel delivered by Paul. And we were given sort of a watered-down version of what Yeshua ben Yosef was actually all about. Right? And so in that regard, I think that is a big part of this revelation, at least for me, is I've been finding a lot of very interesting concepts that ring true with exactly the sort of thing you were just speaking on in the so-called Gnostic texts.
Yeah, and it actually there's been some translations, for example, of the ancient Mayan Popol Vuh tradition that also speaks of similar kind of archontic elements, and those are civilizations that, according at least to the manufactured consensus historiographic yarns that we have today, they were completely separate and they never interfaced as civilizations. So that's interesting to me, that there's another sort of tie on a different continent of these sort of, what could be dubbed, sort of super demigods. Entities that can manifest themselves within a physical expression, but can also disapparate and continue to exist in a much more protracted, potentially immortal capacity, on a different vibrational frequency, and still subsist and still be able to have nourishment from people's activities and their energies and their thoughts and their dreams and memories and all this. So and that's in Mesopotamia, some 2,000 years before Christ, So I think there's something to that, and I don't think that wisdom tradition should be ignored. The idea of the elder ones, right? That also ripples through a lot of other pre-Abrahamic civilizations as well.
It's in all mythology.
Yes, it's ultimately all mythologies, but they go back much farther than the creation narratives that are common today.
Well, you're kind of describing demons and fallen angels. Kind of the biblical perspective on these entities. And when I when I figured out space was fake and the aliens from outer space, what the government wants you to believe in, with SpaceX and Space Force are here going to save us from a fake alien invasion.
Right.
They're just fallen angels. They're covering the Bible story. It became more and more and more obvious. They hate Jesus. They mock Jesus. And it's like, why do you hate Jesus so much and want to show us fake aliens? It was like, okay. Then Project Bluebeam comes out, and it's like, they're literally pushing this so hard in Hollywood. Can you see the inversion? Can you see through the veil here? There's no outer space aliens.
Right.
But they're sure going to tell us that on the news.
Well, and this
sounds
is
like
where-
act number 3.
Right.
So, I mean, I think you guys are onto it. I just say the spiritual side of this is definitely everything I researched came back to the same conclusion. And it's ultimately just going for the truth. But you guys are just on the journey. We all are. I don't know everything, but
Absolutely.
my perspective is I can't overlook the jab and the climax that's coming. And so that's my favorite thing to talk about with those who aren't jabbed. I don't really get into it too many who are jabbed. That's why that's the first question I ask people. And then I definitely ask them if they think it's flat or not. But it keeps it interesting.
They've already got Neuralink implemented in at least a few people, right? So like it's already, if what you're saying is true, then it's already
in
here.
6.5 billion people. 6.5 billion people. It's already in them.
Yeah. Well, right. So what I'm saying is though, like, okay, so the cover story is that like, okay, they're testing, physically inserting these chips into people for medicinal purposes, right? That's the cover story. In the meantime, if what you're saying is true, they've actually already implemented this, back in 2020 or whatever, 2021, whatever they started doing that.
I've heard crazy videos that's even crazy for me to digest, but it's people just basically saying, hey, I got 3 Pfizer shots and I've merged with the AI. It talks to me. I see the computer screens in my eyeballs. I can think of a question. It talks. Yeah, no, I've heard multiple of these, and literally, what do you think all the receipts are going to show? That's what Elon Musk is doing. He already said it. He's like, you can pay one day, and you'll be in my eyes, in my ears. You'll live through my eyes like being John Malkovich. It's just changing bodies, changing temples. That's literally what they tell you the transhumanism is. You're all connected to the AI computer.
I know that's the goal.
Literally the goal.
I know that's the goal.
Yeah, that's the Ray Kurzweil singularity sort of.
And
yeah.
so if 6.5 billion people got injected with experimental shots all over the board, how many are going to pop up and admit what they're experiencing? The guy even said, he's like, I know other people can do this, but they don't talk about it. And he said, there's no God. The AI tells me there's no God. And Elon Musk said, don't give the humanity AI. It's a demon. You can't put it back in the box. And he says, hey, sit in the chair. I'll put it in your head. Buy my car. It has AI. Buy my robot. It has AI. Like he just said it was a demon.
He does speak
It's like,
out
what
of
are you
both
doing?
sides of his mouth, doesn't he?
Which is why he's
Yeah,
firmly
that's
within
the
the
fault.
pseudoscience.
It's so real
They cannot tell the
because
truth.
it looks so
Yeah.
fake.
Exactly. He's the false prophet. He's the biggest liar. They want you to make you think he's got Asperger's and he talks like a genius billionaire. No, that's to trick you. It's psychological talking. That's why Trump talks like that. He's the Antichrist.
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Do you guys ever watch Thunderfoot's videos on YouTube? Thunderfoot?
Rings a bell.
Ever seen Thunderfoot's videos? So like all he does on every single one of his videos is just rip on Elon Musk. And like I'll tell you what, he's never gotten nothing. Like he always has something to talk about, is what I'm trying to say, because
For sure.
Elon Musk is such a piece of shit. He's such a piece of shit, dude. Like he's like the absolute worst. He really is, in my opinion.
Yeah,
And now they're gonna put him in. Oh my god! Like it's so stupid to put him in charge of Doge. Like I can't stand Elon Musk.
The premise.
Go ahead, I'm
Hold
sorry.
on. The premise of putting him in charge of Doge. Okay, he's in charge of Doge. He's in charge of Twitter. He's in charge of SpaceX. He's in charge of Tesla. He's in charge of Grok. Oh, he's the #1 Diablo player in North America. And you have jokers like Joe Rogan talking about, he's seen him on the show. Is he an alien? He had Duncan Trussell on recently. They were talking about that. Oh, how does he manage his time? Well, clearly, I mean, maybe he is an alien. Maybe he has AI performing agentic actions on his behalf.
Have y'all taken
as
the
his
bog pill?
Digital persona. The bog pill?
The Bogdanovs?
Bogdanovs.
So by extraterrestrial, we really mean beyond, like the beyondlands, like the outer lands. So it's possible that there are entities from, 50,000 miles south that we just don't know about.
Or
I'll tell you
50,000
what,
miles
there
underground.
Or 5,000 miles underground, right?
There are definitely non-human entities living underground, probably right underneath most people's houses, and they don't even know it.
Right.
And the thing is, okay, sure, you have different areas where they're probably more prevalent, and I'm not going to say any places, but I am 100% thoroughly convinced. First of all, they have definitely been using these really amazing tunneling machines to connect all the DUMBs, the deep underground military bases that are not only all over the U.S., but all over the world now, probably all the way in Antarctica, for sure. But, I remember years ago hearing them, and you still see videos online, it's cloud, they call it skyquakes, or it sounds like grinding metal things, but it sounds like it's coming from the sky. No, I heard this a bunch of times. It definitely sounds like they're using those automatic or automated tunneling machines that'll go, they'll build tunnels the size for 2 dump trucks to drive through comfortably, miles in a day.
Let's not forget
It's just automated.
the New York synagogue tunnels
just a year ago
broke a year ago, the beginning of 2024.
That big controversy at the Chabad headquarters there in New York was
Chabad.
Exactly a year ago.
Chabad.
Chabad. and it's that one kind of went down the memory hole.
Well, understandably so, with the drone Opticon and
drone
the
Opticon,
assassination attempt, and we're over time. We've probably gone about almost 4 hours.
Oh, what? Wow, that lasted. Yeah. Excellent.
But we need to
barely 3 hours and 20 minutes.
Close.
3 hours 20.
I was counting the off-air time outside the studio with Xavier.
You're good, man. It's way past my bedtime too. But I'll roll with y'all as long as y'all want to roll.
You're
good
the
either
man.
way.
You're the man.
Dude,
we do
thanks
need to
for
close it
hanging
up.
with us, man. That was awesome.
And thank you, James, for calling in. Thank you,
James,
Eric.
Big Dog.
Big Dog.
Yo, we had the ultimate panel tonight.
I think we might
hot.
We might have to have a vote for the 444 Tfuel, although Morgile, you're gonna get a payout for staying the entire duration.
You stay here the whole time, dude. That's awesome.
So we'll talk about that offline. But
thank you.
You're the man, and we support you and appreciate you coming on. It's been a great show.
Anytime, man. All you got to do is hit me up, man. Anytime.
Excellent. Welcome aboard, my hearty.
Great show, guys. Way to break it down.
Yeah.
Eric,
thank you, Eric. We'll hook you up as well, my friend.
Excellent.
It's great process with, the Christian Bible perspective and science. You found a good median. I really do think you broke kind of some new ground there.
I love to hear that.
That's great.
Yeah.
We're all
yeah, there definitely is.
The more the merrier, man. Yep. We've been around for a while now. We've been around going on 6 years.
6 years.
Going on 6 years.
Yeah.
Hold it down.
Keep it down. Keep the Turing testing going.
Peace,
got
gentlemen.
no choice. Might as well make it fun.
One of these days we'll have to do a 24-hour broadcast.
You guys be well. God bless.
Cheers, Eric.
Right back at you, bro.
You too, my friend.
Cheers.
Adios, amigos.